He flicked his fingers and 5 dense bolts of lightning lashed out. Another light flashed from his hand to produce a square embroidered cloth drifting downward. Its surface faintly glowed with strange talisman characters in a mysterious fashion. When the green shadow saw this, he was alarmed but not frightened. Instead, he shook his shoulder, summoning 2 gray shadows from his back. In a blur, they split off to confront the oncoming lightning and cloth. The green shadow then twisted his body, wanting to create some distance. An icy harumph sounded from the winged silhouette above him. An inconceivable event followed. As soon as the green shadow heard him, he violently trembled. Afterwards, his figure stopped and was left in a daze. A rolling thunder rang, and the 5 bolts of golden lightning were the first to strike the shadow puppet. Upon contact, the gray shadow dissolved from the golden light like ice to the sun. A gray mist was all that was left behind. Simultaneously, the odd talisman characters on the embroidered cloth lit up and ruptured. Myriads of fine silver threads covered the gray shadow and immediately retracted it back into the cloth, holding the shadow puppet firmly in place. Thunder rang from the embroidered cloth, and countless arcs of lightning leaped out, attacking the immobile shadow puppet. At that moment, the winged silhouette flapped his wings and immediately disappeared with the flash of a silver line. A moment later, the silver line appeared above the green shadow. The winged silhouette then waved his hand in a casual motion. His palm sparkled with light, and soon light lit up from his fingers, releasing 5 various colored bone rings. The rings were as fine as jade with pea-sized skulls meticulously carved from their surface. The eyes in the skulls stirred, and the skull opened its mouth as if it were alive. The 5 skulls released different colored glacial flames, and they fused together to create a gorgeous barrier of rainbow flame. Just as he collected himself from being intimidated before, the green shadow saw flames light from in front of him as he was about to be engulfed in rainbow flames. He felt his entire body tensed and felt it become incredibly slow. In the next moment, the green shadow felt great terror. However, he was a high-grade existence in the Shadow Clan. He instantly let out a piercing shriek from his mouth, causing his green body to burst into countless green threads. They scattered in every direction to avoid being trapped by the rainbow flames. The winged silhouette seemed to have already anticipated this, and suddenly swiped down with his other hand. Light lit up from it, and the image of a small black mountain was faintly revealed from his hand. With a flip of his hand, rings of gray light suddenly rushed out from his palm. When the gray light flew out, the green threads seemed to have encountered their match. As the rings swept the green threads inside of them, they were instantly crushed and turned to green dust. At that moment, the green shadow's crimson eyes were filled with terror. However, his body felt immense pressure as if the land itself was weighing down on him. Against such a powerful ability, he couldn't muster himself to escape. Winds tore as differently colored light shot out from the winged silhouette's hands, placing a series of talismans on the green shadow. The green shadow blurred, and the crimson light gradually faded from his eyes. An inconceivable event occurred. Under the restriction of the talismans, the green shadow began to shrink until he was only a fist-sized green ball that weakly pulsed with faint green light. The winged silhouette didn't find this odd in the slightest and withdrew his abilities. He simply reached his hand out in the air. The green ball immediately tore through the air and easily arrived in the person's head. At that moment, the winged silhouette turned to the dumbstruck azure-armored old man and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Yue, I'm afraid I've arrived too late. Are you all right?" The old man eventually collected himself and withdrew the flying sword in front of him. He returned the smile and saluted the man. "Brother Han, what are you saying? Had you not saved my life, I fear I would have been in trouble. I've long heard of your exceptional abilities, and now I see those rumors are entirely true. Even a high-grade Shadow Tribe member isn't enough to be your match." The winged silhouette was actually a youth wearing a set of azure armor, Han Li. But at that moment, Han Li already progressed his cultivation to mid-deity transformation stage. Han Li chuckled in response and said, "Brother Yue is exaggerating. It's just that my techniques happen to be effective against the Shadow Tribe members. If it were another foreign race, my attacks wouldn't have been effective." Fellow Taoist Han is quite modest. Who could have known that your small squad would suffer no casualties during decades of patrol assignments? I heard in those years, you've killed quite a few foreign tribe spies. Considering all your merits, my praise hadn't been enough. The old man wryly laughed and shook his head. "Nonsense, so the other fellow Taoists must be all right." Han Li chuckled, and then he looked around. there should be any problems. Since that Shadow Tribe member has been restrained, the puppets he controlled should have dispersed. My subordinates had been earlier possessed, but since only a short time had passed, their vitality will only be a bit damaged in the worst case. So why did you come across this place? Where are your subordinates? When the old man saw that Han Li didn't want to continue that conversation, he tactfully changed the topic. Han Li took out a jade box from his storage bracelet and put the restrained green shadow in it. Then he calmly answered, it was only a matter of luck. I recently acquired a high-grade foreign spirit plate, so it gives me a broader range. I happened to be patrolling with my squad in a nearby area and the plate rang. As for my subordinates, I ordered them to stay in place before I took off. So it was like that. I've managed to escape calamity through luck alone, the old man sighed. At that moment, the two black-armored guards nearby approached Han Li and uttered deep thanks for his timely arrival. From a distance, the other cultivators were returning and arrived before Han Li, uttering a similar word of thanks. Han Li uttered a few pleasantries before saying farewell and flying off in an azure streak. After Han Li disappeared from sight, the large man with a fierce expression muttered, I heard when Senior Han just arrived at Deep Heaven City. He was only at early deity transformation stage cultivation, but his abilities were on par with a mid-stage cultivator. And 10 years ago, he entered mid-stage, and his abilities became even more profound. The other black-armored guard said with admiration, more than just that. I heard that in the decades he spent on his patrol assignment, he killed 8 high-grade foreign beings. He can't be compared to an ordinary Dark Azure guard. Could it be that ascended cultivators are all such fearsome existences? The middle-aged woman snorted and said, Ascended cultivators are a grade stronger than those native to the spirit realm, but that Senior Han is an outlier even among ascended cultivators. The other cultivators were startled when they heard this. After Han Li faded from sight, the old man twirled his beard long in thought. After a short while, he waved his hand and had his squad depart. Hundreds of kilometers away, an azure streak tore through the air, and the light faded away to reveal Han Li. At that same moment, a dozen streaks of light flew up from the ground and stopped before Han Li to reveal black-armored cultivators. Squad leader, Senior Han. They all called out to him and stood at attention while floating in the air. After several decades had passed, the squad remained safe and sound, but this time they viewed Han Li with obvious respect. They no longer possessed an ounce of disobedience. This was to be expected. The other 3 squads that undertook patrol missions in similar areas would see an astonishing number of deaths. There were times that over half the small squads would need to be replaced. Although his own squad encountered many dangers, Han Li resolved each of them with ease, earning him the unopposed command of his squad. Of course, under Han Li's guidance, the squad acquired many rewards, much to their satisfaction. Han Li nodded and casually said, Let's go. The foreign being was a green shadow, and it has already been disposed of. A cultivator with a young appearance chuckled and said, A green shadow? That is quite troublesome. The squad leader must have been able to restrain him easily with his divine essence-effused light. Let alone the green shadow, if a scarlet shadow appeared, the squad leader might have had a real fight. Han Li snorted and said, A scarlet shadow is something that even spatial tempering cultivators find difficult to deal with. How could I possibly deal with one? All right, let's hurry on our way. After we patrol this last area, we'll be able to rest for another year. Last time, we encountered a high-grade cave hollow tribe being there. This time, we encountered a high-grade shadow tribe being. Cultivator Ma's cheek twitched and he sullenly said, That's right. Isn't this becoming too ordinary over the past 10 years? Even if we commonly discover foreign tribe scouts, it can't happen this often. There are even high-grade beings among them, each of them entering the swamp without any fear. I heard that the buried bone desert that the demons are managing on the other side are also encountering a large number of foreign tribe scouts. Large number of metamorphosed demons are also dying on their patrols. Could it be there are foreign tribes that plan on attacking Deep Heaven City? When the others heard this, their expressions vastly changed and their smiles faded. Still as beautiful as before, Fairy Sue frowned and said, That can't be. It had only been 30,000 years the foreign tribes last attacked Deep Heaven City. Don't they usually launch an attack every 60,000 years? After war, foreign tribes usually need 60 to 100,000 years to launch another attack. If something unforeseen has occurred and they want to quickly start another way at the cost of their strength, it would be possible. In the Great 100 Tribe War 500 years ago, foreign tribes alternated in 5 waves of attacks over a span of 100,000 years. It nearly wiped out all the strength of both humans and demons, leaving us on the verge of destruction. It took 100,000 years before we could flourish once more. Of course, some of these foreign tribes were exterminated during the war. The large green-eyed man felt his breath turn cold and he widely opened his eyes. The Great 100-Tribe War. You must be joking. That war engulfed most of the spirit realm. How can you say something like that will happen? And didn't we end up on top after that? Fellow Taoist Ma's words are quite frightening. If another war like that happens, it will be difficult for us to survive. During that war, mortals were fine, but 9 out of 10 cultivators suffered heavily from them. Fairy Sue said with a chill. That's right, how can that? When the others heard the words 100-Tribe War, their faces paled as if the Taoist priest said something fearsome, making it difficult to keep their calm. That's enough. We've only encountered more foreign tribe scouts recently. How would that lead to another grand 100-Tribe War? There is little chance of this happening, and even if it happens, it isn't something we have control over. Let's first complete the patrol assignment. That's more important. As for matters of war, let the panel of elders deal with it. With a calm expression, Han Li uttered his orders and took the lead. The others promptly stopped their conversation and flew after him. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared from the horizon. Several days later, Han Li and the others sat on top of a gold court boat and returned to a giant pagoda in Deep Heaven City. While the others remained in the hall to rest, Han Li left the squad base alone and climbed up to the top of the stone pagoda. After walking 10 stories up, he eventually arrived at a tightly guarded gate and entered an unremarkable large hall. The hall's walls flickered with various restrictions. They were great in number and appeared to be incredibly powerful. Inside the hall, apart from the stone table and a white-robed middle-aged man sitting at the side of the stone table, there was no one else. Just as Han Li entered it, the middle-aged man slowly opened his eyes and gave Han Li a calm glance. So it was esteemed nephew Han. What did you gain during this patrol? Is it living or dead? Which tribe is it? The middle-aged man appeared quite familiar with Han Li. Senior, I report that I have captured a shadow tribe scout alive. Not daring to be negligent, Han Li respectfully saluted the middle-aged man and took out a jade box and placed it on the table. The shadow tribe, rarely is one captured alive. Let me take a look. The white-robed middle-aged man's expression stirred in excitement. Han Li formed an incantation gesture and slapped the table in front of him. The stone table suddenly glowed with white light, and a 3-meter-wide spell formation appeared with the jade box right at its center. A layer of silver light appeared from it, and the jade box was thoroughly restrained. The middle-aged man swept his sleeve towards the jade box without any regard of the formation and opened its lid, revealing a green ball of faint light within it. The middle-aged man examined the ball and rejoiced. A green shadow. This is a high-grade shadow tribe being that is difficult to come across, and it is even alive. Nephew, this will earn you great merit. Senior praises me too much. I hear that in half a month the Deep Heaven Hall will have an Elder Xing lecture about talismans. Is this true? That's right. This time at Deep Heaven Hall, it will be Elder Xing lecturing. Although I don't know if you follow talisman refinement, Elder Xing's famous for his talisman techniques and lecture will most likely follow that route. Could it be that nephew Han is interested in it? The middle-aged man said with surprise. Han Li openly said, I've recently delved into studying talismans and have gained some insights. I was hoping for some guidance. The middle-aged man frowned and slowly said, if the Tao of talismans is studied deeply, it will have countless wondrous uses in battle, but this is only a supplementary technique. It doesn't have much use in cultivation. For nephew Han to be able to progress his cultivation to mid-stage after only shortly ascending to the spirit realm, you are a rare kind even among other ascended cultivators like us. Your exceptional talents are clear to see, but it would be best if you weren't distracted by other things, or you may suffer harm in your main cultivation. Many thanks for your kind intentions, Senior. I will take it to heart, but I do want to attend Elder Xing's lecture. I don't know if my accumulated merits would allow me to listen to him. Han Li showed no intention of backing down. Since you've made your decision, I won't say anything further. Adding your past merits to this one, you have more than enough to enter the Deep Heaven Hall. Every 10 years an elder lectures there, and you seem to never miss a single one. It should be quite tough for you as well. All right, I'll make a list of your accomplishments. Take it to the Merit Evaluation Pavilion and receive your lecture token. He took out a jade badge from his robes and inscribed something to it before handing it over to Han Li. Han Li took the jade badge with joy and saluted the middle-aged man. Then he bid goodbye and head into the hall. When the middle-aged man saw Han Li leave the hall, he shook his head and then nodded. Afterwards, the jade box on the table closed and he formed an incantation gesture before pointing at the table. The spell formation on the table glowed dazzlingly, and white flashed from the box before it disappeared. Just as the middle-aged man was teleporting the green shadow to a restricted area, Han Li flew out the deep heaven city market. Several hours later, Han Li dropped down to the profound Zenith Hall. Han Li handed the guards a bag of spirit stones and wore the given concealment pendant before heading inside. After walking through a long passage, Han Li emerged into the large hall. It was filled with humans and demons trading with one another. The total of figures covered in silver and black light numbered over 300. There were tens of vendors laid out all over the hall. Han Li swept his gaze around, and his gaze stopped on a stone pillar at the center of the hall. There was a demon standing still. Han Li took a deep breath and walked over. Before Han Li arrived, he heard a chuckle and a sweet voice happily say, "You've finally come. After our last meeting, I thought you've secluded yourself in bitter cultivation. I thought it'd be decades before I'd see you again." Han Li smiled and replied through voice transmission, "I've only come this time to test my luck. I didn't think that fellow Taoist Yan would actually arrive here. It appeared that you also sensed that something had been wrong recently and also wanted to conclude our business." After a pause, the woman's voice turned ice cold. "There is something wrong. You must have heard about it. Take a look at the hall. There are several times more people than normal. Doesn't this mean something?" Han Li leisurely replied. He paid no mind to the woman's tone. "Could it be that you've heard something?" A glint shined from her eyes. "I don't know much, but there have been high-grade cultivators dispatching troops. As for the regions we're overseeing, more foreign tribe scouts have been appearing there, about 6 times as many. How are things on your side?" After some hesitation, the woman truthfully answered, "It's about the same. Those old fogies have started to show their faces in greater numbers, and there even are new faces in the city. Their cultivation is quite powerful. They should be new subordinates that arrived from the 7 demon lands." "I've got it. It seems there is something that's about to happen. How often do you experience attacks from foreign tribes?" Han Li asked. The woman sullenly answered, 3 times out of 10 on a patrol. Why else has the city undergone such astonishing changes? 30%, that is quite high. Han Li let out a long sigh and muttered to himself for a moment. The woman indifferently said, "That's right. After I finish this deal here, I won't be appearing here again. If fellow Taoist wishes to preserve his life, it'd be best for him to leave this city. Otherwise, when the foreign tribes attack, it will be difficult to escape calamity considering our cultivation." "Your words are quite simple, but as a cultivator of the city, how could I escape? And every year I also need." Han Li wryly laughed and his words came to a sudden stop as if something came to mind. It is quite troublesome to leave the city as of current. Our races are different and I am powerless. Fortunately, even if a war breaks out, you have several years to think of a plan. All right, that's enough information. Let's begin trading." Han Li raised no objection to the woman and merely asked, "How many spirit medicine seeds did you gather this time?" "Last time, fellow Taoist Yen managed to find several. Although they were rare, they didn't have many uses." The woman sweetly laughed and said, "Don't worry, fellow Taoist. This time I was able to gather most of the ones you pointed out to me. To tell the truth, if it weren't for the fact that there will soon be a war, I wouldn't have paid such a large price for these seeds. I have other things that I have to worry about. More importantly, I hope you've brought enough myriad-year spirit herbs." Han Li strangely smiled and asked, "We've traded several times before. How would I be lacking in spirit medicine?" "This time, however, the seeds are exceptionally rare. They are no less valuable than your myriad-year spirit herbs. It's only that spirit herbs of that age are hardly seen, or else I wouldn't be doing business with you." The woman sweetly giggled and flipped her hand to produce an emerald green wooden box. She tossed it over to him. There were simple flower patterns engraved on the box. The faint talisman characters flickering on the box clearly showed it was no common object. Han Li caught the box with a solemn expression. Without opening the box, he peered inside it with his bright-sight spirit eyes. He also searched it with his immense spiritual sense. For a time, Han Li stood in place with the box in hand. The demon woman didn't view Han Li's actions as strange and didn't urge him to be faster. She simply stared at Han Li without a word. It was as if she was trying to make out Han Li's true appearance through the silver light. A short while later, the woman sighed and withdrew her gaze. There was no doubt she was curious about this person. His identity must be unordinary since he possessed so many myriad-year spirit herbs. If she were to guess, this person most likely belonged to one of the hidden true spirit noble clans. It was most likely he belonged to the Min clan, who were renowned for spirit medicine nurturing. However, her partner was extremely cautious. She attempted to approach the topic several times, but not only did she come up with nothing, she almost revealed her own identity in a moment of carelessness. This left the woman incredibly vexed for a long while after. Although he couldn't find her using the name she'd give her, it completely stifled her intent on finding his identity. She instead became vigilant in not releasing any more information about herself. But she couldn't help but be excited at the thought of acquiring the myriad-year spirit medicine. Although she came from a somewhat extraordinary background and possessed some status in her clan, she still wasn't able to acquire many spirit medicines, no matter how many spirit stones she offered. So long as business here succeeds, she would have enough spirit medicines to have someone refine them into various required medicine pills she needed to break through her bottleneck. Of course, she was also greatly interested in the spirit medicine seeds that Han Li was collecting, but so long as he paid her as agreed, she was disinclined to delve deep into the matter. When the demon woman started to feel her heart thump, Han Li finally finished examining the box and nodded with satisfaction. "Not bad. It's most of the seeds that I told you to get. Here are your medicinal herbs. Take a good look at them." With that, he took out several jade boxes from his body and handed them over to her. The woman didn't dare to be careless and carefully inspected it as well. The woman put away the medicine herbs and giggled. "Yes, they really are medicine herbs 10,000 years of age. This will be the last business we'll have for some time to come. If you truly manage to avoid calamity, perhaps there will be another opportunity to meet." Han Li swept his sights past the other vendors and pensively said, "I hope that's the case. Now that we're done, I'll be taking a look around to see if there is anything good. There should be a few hidden treasures waiting to be found." "You are quite shrewd. From what I've seen so far, there are many rare treasures. However, I have other things to attend to, so I'll be parting here." "Please go ahead," Han Li calmly saluted her. The woman nimbly turned around and made her way to the exit on the demon's side. After Han Li saw her leave, his lips twitched into a smile. Originally, the clear jade pills were only supposed to be effective for the early deity transformation stage. Now that he's done several trades with the woman, he collected enough medicines to create 2 types of medicine pills that would be useful to a mid-deity transformation cultivator. It appears he wouldn't have to worry about medicine pills for some time. With that important matter out of the way, he felt relief and slowly walked past a human vendor that was set up nearby. After walking around the hall, Han Li frowned. Although there were many vendors, the treasures they presented were far more previous than he had seen before. As of current, there aren't many treasures and materials that can easily catch his interest. What most interested him were secret techniques. They were rarely on sale, and they weren't guaranteed to be interesting to him either. He shook his head and slowly departed from the hall. He took off to the air as soon as he left and went towards his residence in the stone pagoda. In half a month, there would be the lecture at Deep Heaven Hall, something Han Li definitely wouldn't miss. And even without the lecture, he had other things to attend to that kept him in the city. When he returned to his residence in the stone pagoda, Han Li took the jade badge that had his merits recorded, and he took it to another hall in exchange for a permission token. Then he returned to his squad's base and found a quiet place to rest. 3 days later, he hurriedly left for some part of the city. Half a day later, he appeared outside the city above a valley. The valley was lush and verdant. Apart from its natural beauty, there didn't seem to be anything else there. The azure streak circled in the air and suddenly dropped down onto the valley. The light faded, and Han Li appeared 100 meters above a stone wall. He took a look around and found nothing out of the ordinary. Then, with a wave of his sleeve, he released a golden talisman that vanished into the wall. Han Li quietly waited. A short moment later, something suddenly changed. A layer of gray light appeared from the surface of the wall, and a 6-meter-tall passage appeared before him. The passage was in the shape of a square, and was made of gray stone that shined with a faint light. Han Li smiled and head downward. After walking over 150 meters, he came across the white jade door covered in light. Without any hesitation, He formed an incantation gesture and muttered an incantation. The light trembled and split open to form a passage that Han Li leisurely walked through. Behind the door there was a 100-meter-wide hall. Apart from 20-some stone chairs and a large stone desk at the center, there was nothing else. Furthermore, there were already 9 cultivators sitting on the chairs. There were men and women, all of them in different attire, but each of them with cultivation at deity transformation and above. When these cultivators saw Han Li enter, a few of them smiled and called out to him. Brother Han had also come. You've come quite early. I heard Brother Han managed to capture a green shadow alive. He is the pride of us ascended cultivators. Han Li smiled and saluted them. He then went to the corner of the hall and looked for a stone chair. The other cultivators that didn't call out to him remained calm or ignored him entirely. Han Li paid no attention to them either and simply closed his eyes. Not long after Han Li took a seat, more cultivators began to enter the hall and he uttered a greeting to his acquaintances. 4 hours later, there were 16 cultivators in the hall. No further cultivators entered after a long while, but nobody had any private discussions. They were all quietly waiting in their seats. A long while later, a man's voice sounded out from the large hall. It appears that everyone that planned on coming has arrived, or they are occupied with a mission. Brother Zhao, let's start. Yes, just about everyone has arrived. Let's do as you say, Brother Wen. The voice sounded quite familiar. As his heart stirred, he opened his eyes. 2 middle-aged men walked into the hall. One of them was white-robed and had a smile. The other had a pale, hairless face and was expressionless. It was Cultivator Wen who gave Han Li his merit Bade not long before, and Zhao Wugui who brought him to the city. When the 2 spatial tempering cultivators entered the hall, they began to stir. It was clear most of them recognized them. Zhao Wugui swept his sights past them and indifferently said, originally, it should have been fellow Taoist Wen who would take charge over the meeting of newly ascended cultivators. Because an important matter occurred, we'll be taking over. I hope there are no objections. The cultivators felt their hearts tremble, and they remained silent. When the white-robed middle-aged man saw this, he wore a pleasant expression. Originally, only fellow Taoist Zhao was supposed to take charge, but recent affairs have become somewhat peculiar, so there are a few important matters I must discuss with you all. That is why I am here. An old man with a red nose suddenly asked, does the peculiar matter Senior Wen mentioned have to do with a possible attack on the city by foreign tribes? When the others heard his question, they felt their hearts trembled and they all stared at the 2 spatial tempering cultivators, waiting for an answer. Zhao Wugui coldly said, we'll be talking about that matter later. In accordance to common practice, we'll first host the trade meeting and then share cultivation experiences at the end. If anyone has any difficulties in cultivation, we can offer some guidance. But like fellow Taoist fan, it will come at considerable cost. Finally, if you believe there is any interesting information, you may report it to us. If it is useful, we'll be rewarding you with spirit medicine such as earth-cleansing pills. When they heard Zhao Wugui, all the cultivators raised no objections. Zhao Wugui and Cultivator Wen took a glance at each other and promptly walked to the large stone table in the middle of the hall. The nearby cultivators promptly stood up and respectfully opened a few seats for them. The 2 nodded, and they promptly took 2 of the seats. After the 2 spatial tempering cultivators sat down, they began the trade meeting without a hitch. Han Li used Myriad Year Profound Jade to trade for several rare talismans. As of current, his attainments in talismans were at a crucial point. Although these talismans didn't have any silver runes, they were still quite distinct. He may experience some insight from them under careful studying. Letter 1D557, letter 1D42B, letter 1D41E, letter 1D556, letter 1D568, letter 1D41E, letter 1D41C, letter 1D5FC, letter 1D696. With all trading finished, everyone began to speak a bit about their cultivation insights or their unique experiences with secret techniques. Although almost everyone spoke in simple or vague terms and a few spoke in detail, any crucial points were deliberately omitted. Those that were interested wouldn't urge them on but send them a voice transmission afterwards. The 2 would then conduct an exchange for their own techniques or insights. The 2 spatial tempering cultivators paid no mind to this. Having recently delved into the Tao of Talismans, Han Li merely spoke of a few shallow areas of his understanding. However, it was clear there weren't many ascended cultivators in the hall that were interested in talismans. They didn't particularly pay much attention to him. But when Cultivator Wen and Zhao Wugui heard Han Li mention something related to silver rune talismans, A trace of astonishment briefly appeared on their faces. Although there were many high-grade cultivators that comprehended silver runes, it would be incredibly difficult to study talismans without direct instruction. After the group of cultivators finished speaking of their experiences, there were a few people that impatiently raised a few difficulties they experienced in their cultivation to Zhao Wugui and Cultivator Wen. However, Cultivator Wen only offered a few brief words in response and faintly smiled. As for Zhao Wugui, he gave them a few words in voice transmission. Whether they nodded or shook their head, the cultivators immediately sat back down and asked nothing else. These newly ascended cultivators more or less experienced difficulties in their cultivation. Apart from Han Li, all of them were unwilling to abandon the opportunity. Furthermore, Han Li was cultivating the dual-body magic cultivation art, the Provenance True Devil Arts. Although there were areas he didn't understand, no one had cultivated it before, so he was disinclined to ask questions about it. He simply sat at the side. 2 hours later, everyone finished speaking, and they began to trade their information to them for medicine pills. With this, all one would expect from an ordinary meeting was finished. At that moment, Cultivator Wen sighed and he slowly stood up. All right, since we've finished all minor affairs, we've brought a few orders from Elder Lei Luo. Listen well. The other cultivators felt their hearts tremble and their faces turned grave. Deep Heaven City had 5 human elders. Master Lei Luo and Monk Jin Yue were 2 of them. The 2 were body integration cultivators of profound ability and were both ascended cultivators. However, Jin Yue didn't bother with external affairs and spent most of his time in secluded cultivation. Master Lei Luo became the leader of the city's ascended cultivators as a result. He had an unrivaled prestige amongst ascended cultivators. However, Han Li had yet to see either in person ever since he's arrived at the city. He's seen the other 3 human elders during their lectures at the Deep Heaven Hall. Zhao Wugui's cold voice sounded through the hall. Elder Lei Luo gave a command not long before. He's finally acquired some concrete information. Within 10 years, Deep Heaven City will most likely be besieged by various foreign tribes. There is a slight possibility it will be an attack by 3 or more foreign tribes. Although the odds are next to nothing, there is a slight chance that there will be a repeat of the 100 tribe war. Although many in the hall already anticipated what Zhao Wugui had said, their hearts still sank upon hearing them. Most even turned pale when they heard the mention of the 100 tribe war. Although it had only been about 100 years since these cultivators ascended from a lower realm, they were still familiar with the legends of the ancient war. It was a threat that nearly resulted in the extinction of humans and demons. According to the last war, the fighting took 10,000 years to finish and was cruel beyond imagination. Sitting in the corner of the room and having spoken little this entire time, Han Li let out a long sigh and wryly smiled. It appeared these circumstances were far worse than he expected. He'd have to think of a plan to save himself. Otherwise, if a large war was about to erupt, a body integration stage cultivator would have difficulty surviving, let alone a trifling deity transformation cultivator. A barefoot man stood up with a salute and respectfully asked, "Why did Senior tell this information to low cultivation people like us? Wouldn't this secret information leak?" Zhao Wugui coldly said, "Fellow Taoists, you all cultivated in lower realms with sparse spiritual qi until you reached this stage. You prevailed against every difficulty to ascend to the spirit realm. Your wisdom is unordinary, so I will make it clear. In these coming years, all ascended cultivators holding positions as Dark Azure Guards will be placed in important positions. If a dangerous matter appears, the panel of elders will choose us to first deal with it. Although an ascended cultivator joins us every several years, most of the high-grade cultivators that died for Deep Heaven City were ascended cultivators like us. In truth, the number of ascended cultivators doesn't even amount to 1/10 of the total number of high-grade cultivators in the city. The cultivators native to the spirit realm hold safer positions. Over the past few years, you should have come to realize this. A few of you should have carried out orders for extremely dangerous missions. You might now know this, but your current status is a result of the solidarity of ascended cultivators and the painstaking effort of Elder Lei Luo. Before Monk Jin Yue and Elder Lei Luo entered the panel of elders, it is said that the treatment of ascended cultivators like us was even worse. A small half of ascended cultivators would often perish in the line of duty. All of the cultivators wore stiff expression upon hearing this. All the cultivators felt these words to be true. Over recent years, they personally witnessed how ascended cultivators were often assigned to extremely dangerous missions where death was likely. If this weren't the case, there would be more of their number in the hall. Han Li remained expressionless. Ever since he became a Dark Azure Guard, he was assigned to the Floating Dawn Swamp and other dangerous areas. And of the squads accompanying him, most of their leaders would also be ascended cultivators. He long felt suspicion over this. As a result, when Zhao Wugui sought him out to participate in this meeting, he readily agreed. As for the native cultivators, he was able to sense a trace of fear they felt towards ascended cultivators. Otherwise, when old eccentric Ming and the others failed to acquire the treasure from his spirit land, they wouldn't have left so easily. All the more reason to accept the invitation when a pillar of support came to find him. Of course, after he joined these meetings, no other matters sought him out and no different missions were forced on his small squad. Naturally, this was also because the Floating Dawn Swamp was already a dangerous area. Cultivator Wen then said, "The reason why we're telling you this information is that Elder Lei Luo wishes to provide an opportunity to preserve the strength of ascended cultivators before he undergoes greater tribulation." A woman in azure palace robes and a headscarf felt a spark of joy and said, "Does Senior mean that Elder Lei Luo has a method for us to leave Deep Heaven City and avoid the war?" A cold light glinted from Zhao Wugui's eyes, and he solemnly said, "The attack on the city is related to the survival of the human race as a whole. We may have some conflict with the other cultivator, but we cannot be negligent in our duty against the foreign tribes. If one dares to flee the city and abandon their duties against the foreign tribes, the enforcement squad won't come to find you. We will personally execute you." All cultivators in the hall were startled in the hall. The palace-robed woman was still brave. After some hesitation she asked, "Then what did Senior mean?" Cultivator Wen chuckled, "Fellow Taoists, don't misunderstand. Elder Lei Luo definitely won't evade his duties, but he also doesn't wish for all of us, the ascended cultivators, to die off either. As such, after some consideration, we've finally come up with a way to preserve our numbers. Although this method is quite dangerous, we've gathered you here to tell you about it. You may choose to participate in this plan." Discussion quickly spread through the hall, and the cultivators couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. Han Li frowned and narrowed his eyes. One of them slowly asked, "Before we make a choice, can Senior explain the plan?" Zhao Wugui coldly smiled. "It's quite simple. Recently, Elder Lei Luo issued comparatively longer-term assignments with heavy merits. These missions are extremely dangerous, so native cultivators won't likely accept them. But if you complete these assignments, you will acquire great merits and justifiably avoid the war. If the war doesn't happen, you can return to Deep Heaven City. If your cultivation isn't enough and war does break out, you'll be far from the war and preserve your life as one of our ascended cultivators. Let's get the ugly talk out of the way first. According to our plans, those on assignments will have a 50% chance of survival. Whether or not you will accept them will be entirely up to you. After all, there will only be two choices when the foreign tribes attack. You can carry out the assignment or most likely die in the war. If you try to avoid both and flee the city, you should know what will happen next." When the cultivators heard the two spatial tempering stage cultivators speak, they all felt a chill run down their bodies and their faces all changed. A coin flip for death. This assignment was just too dangerous, but it was only a likely possibility for the foreign tribes to invade, and if it were only an attack by a single tribe, they were confident they would survive. When that came to mind, the assignment seemed far more dangerous. Of course, a decision regarding one's own life couldn't be considered simple. They needed to put much consideration over it. For a time, silence filled the hall. Cultivator Wen added, "Fellow Taoists, don't need to immediately make a decision. These assignments will continue to be issued for a year. Furthermore, so long as you take the assignment, we'll find someone to take over your original office in the guard. Don't worry if you're on regular assignments." Han Li raised his head and said, "Senior Wen, even if we finish that assignment, how will the matter of the earth-cleansing pill be resolved? Even if we complete the mission, we'll perish to two-colored tribulation." Zhao Wugui replied, "So it is Nephew Han. You don't need to worry about that. These dangerous missions were meant to be putting everything at stake. Naturally, we will give you all the earth-cleansing pills you need, but they will be placed under a restriction. If you don't truly attend to your mission, these earth-cleansing pills destroy themselves, so do not abandon your mission. You should understand the consequences." So it was like that. "Thanks for the explanation, Senior." Han Li nodded and calmly sat down. When several people in the room heard this, their faces remained unchanged, but they wryly smiled in their minds. The last of their hopes were annihilated. We've already mentioned this all to you. The first wave of missions will be issued in half a month. If you do plan on taking the assignment, it will be best to prepare. Although Elder Lei Luo chose those assignments for you all in particular, if there are other cultivators that take them, nothing can be done about it. The meeting is now over. Everyone, return and think well about your choice. With that said, Cultivator Wen ended the meeting with a smile. He then stood up with Zhao Wugui, and they took the first steps out of the hall. The other cultivators remained still for a moment before heading out as well. Most of them frowned as if heavy thoughts weighed on their minds. Han Li wasn't in a hurry to leave. Instead, he remained in his seat as his mind wandered. A short moment later, there were sparsely few in the hall. "Oh, is Brother Han tempted to take the assignment?" One person walked up and asked Han Li with a friendly face. Han Li's expression stirred and he looked at the person who approached him. He beamed and answered, "So it was Fairy Xuan. I'm somewhat tempted. The seniors arranged this choice so it was a method of self-preservation. It is only a bit too dangerous." The woman in azure palace robes who approached Han Li was a mid-deity transformation cultivator. Han Li had seen her several times during the meeting and had spoken to her before. They could be considered acquaintances. Cultivator Xuan sweetly smiled and said, "I heard on a patrol mission not long before, Brother Han captured a green shadow all by himself. It appears Brother Han's abilities are beyond a late deity transformation cultivator. If fellow Taoist takes this mission, you should be better off than most fellow Taoists. How about we join hands and take on the mission together?" Although an azure scarf covered her face, from her exposed skin and enchanting eyes, she was clearly a woman of outstanding beauty. Han Li felt some surprise at her proposal. After staring at her face, he slowly shook his head. "You overpraise me. It hasn't been long since I've entered mid-stage. I can't be compared to you. As for taking on the assignment, I still haven't made a decision. It is still too soon." Han Li's words were polite, but they carried a tactful rejection. Cultivator Xuan betrayed some disappointment from her eyes, but she didn't continue to pursue the topic. After chatting with him for a bit, she took her leave. Once Han Li watched her leave, he withdrew his gaze and sank into thought. Although the woman's cultivation wasn't weak, and she cultivated the 3000 Jade technique that was said to be formidable, he has always acted alone. He didn't want an outsider to know about the treasures he carried. Even if he took on the mission, he had no intention to team up with anyone. Furthermore, there was an important matter that kept him near the city. Even if the war started tomorrow, he wouldn't be able to immediately leave. The myriads of gold-devouring beetles that he fostered with rainbow skirt grass had finally fulfilled their requirements for maturation a year before. With the maturation technique he acquired from the Endless Sky Saintess, they're finally done. In several months to a year, the insects will finish their transformation and will become completely mature. How could he depart during a crucial moment of their change? It could result in the failure of their advancement. As Han Li felt some anxiousness, he eventually took a breath and departed. He flew up in an azure streak and headed back to the city. A dozen days later, Deep Heaven Hall would have a lecture, something he wouldn't want to miss. As such, after he returned to the stone pagoda housing his squad, he immediately sealed himself inside a seclusion room and sat cross-legged on a mat. Han Li flipped his hand to produce a yellow bottle and tossed out a thumb-sized azure pill before swallowing it. A layer of faint azure light then lit off from his body. A glint flashed through Han Li's eyes and he reached out with his hand. He spread out his fingers and slowly shut his eyes. A light pop sounded. A spiritual light flashed from the top of Han Li's head, and a 2-inch large nascent soul appeared from his head. The nascent soul stood on top of a small cauldron. Dozens of miniature golden swords were flying around him. It had an imposing appearance. The nascent soul lowered its head to look at the body beneath it, and it closed its hand together. It blinked, and its eyes separately turned black and white before wearing an innocent smile. It opened its mouth and spat out a silver fireball that struck the top of its palm. With a light bang, the silver flames enveloped the palm. A strange scene followed. Black light flashed from the seemingly ordinary palm, and the 5 fingers released 5 bone rings. Every bone ring had a vividly detailed skull engraved on it. These skulls twisted their appearances inside the silver flames as if they were alive. They had had differing expressions, ranging from happiness, pain, to nothing at all. Regardless of their appearance, the ring shapes continued to fluctuate inside the silver flames. What was even more outrageous was his palm was changing alongside the rings. Furthermore, Its flesh had become more crystalline and white, as if it were more jade than flesh. The nascent soul tilted its head and opened its mouth to release a fireball, striking the body's other palm. Silver light brightly flashed, and the bewitching flame completely wrapped the hand. What was most incredible was that the palm changed under the effects of the silver flame. It turned pitch black and began to char from the heat. A small mountain design appeared from his palm and the back of his hand simultaneously. Gray slightly faintly pulsed from them. As this strange scene occurred from both these palms, the silver flames and the nascent soul blurred, disappearing back into the crown of Han Li's head. Meanwhile, an azure light lit up from Han Li's body and turned faintly golden. A golden phantom appeared from behind him. Although the silhouette was vague, it appeared to possess 3 heads and 6 arms. Han Li's naked wrist and cheek had squares of pure gold talisman characters that slowly roamed across his flesh. From a distance, they looked like golden scales. With golden light radiating from Han Li's body, he looked nearly divine. A dozen days later, Han Li emerged from seclusion with a calm expression. After attending the lecture of Deep Heaven Hall for 3 entire days, Han Li walked out from the city and returned to his cave residence. In addition, a month after Han Li returned to his cave residence, Deep Heaven City's panel of elders suddenly released a set of extremely dangerous and rewarding missions. These missions were related to various foreign clans, but most of them required deity transformation-grade cultivation. This aroused commotion in the city. But because these missions were extremely dangerous, very few accepted them. During this time, several uninvited guests arrived in Han Li's spirit land and paid him a visit. Inside his cave residence, these people had a probing chat with him for half a day before quietly departing. This led Han Li with a wavering expression. After spending several days in deep thought in his seclusion room, he finally came to a decision. 4 months later, most of his gold-devouring beetles have reached complete maturation, resulting in 7,000 formidable spirit insects. Han Li promptly collected them and headed to a secret area in Deep Heaven City, where the secret missions were being assigned and quietly vanished. Not long after, Han Li's small squad received an order and had their leader replaced with another deity transformation cultivator. It wasn't rare for cultivators like Han Li to mysteriously disappear. Since he was an ascended cultivator, he was likely to be unaffiliated or a secret disciple of a noble clan. The sole trait of these people was that they were all deity transformation stage cultivators. In addition, they were all particularly outstanding individuals. Book 9, Races of the Spirit Realm. In an endless crimson forest of twisted trees, there were 5 young men and women. They were in a hidden part of the forest and were 10 meters apart from one another. One of them was a man about 30 years old. He wore embroidered robes and had snow-white robes with eyes like lightning. There was a black-robed woman with a slender body, black brows and draped hair. Her face appeared hostile. The other youth appeared in his late 20s with a blood-red birthmark on his mouth and a handsome appearance. His face wore a faint smile. The second woman wore white robes and appeared to be 18. Her dainty face gave her an innocent appearance. The last of them was an azure-robed youth in his early 20s with an expressionless face. He was Han Li, who had recently left Deep Heaven City. The 5 appeared young, but their cultivation was at deity transformation stage and above. Apart from Han Li and the white-robed woman who had mid-stage cultivation, the other 3 possessed late deity transformation stage cultivation. However, the black-robed woman happened to be the woman surnamed Xiao from the Black Phoenix clan, who Han Li first met at the Beast Wave when his cultivation was lost. The woman coldly glared at Han Li. Although she said nothing, her eyes were filled with bewilderment. "I truly didn't think that you humans would send out 3 cultivators with 2 of them at mid-stage. Could it be that your race plans on having this operation fail?" the white-browed man coldly asked. Although his voice wasn't very loud, everyone could clearly hear it. When they heard the youth, the blood-marked youth's brow faintly stirred and his smile faded. Han Li simply blinked and fiddled with a white jade slip in his hand. As for the young white-robed woman, her black eyes were wandering, but a smile still stuck on her face. The 3 didn't reply. When the white-browed man saw the 3's reaction, he was enraged and thought to say something when the woman surnamed Xiao suddenly said, "This mission is related to Deep Heaven City and the safety of both our kind. If we do not sincerely cooperate, let alone the mission, we may even fail to reach the mission's destination. Don't forget, we'll have to spend a year traveling. Since your kind sent 3 fellow Taoists, you must be unordinary. Since we'll be spending some time with each other, let's exchange names. I am Xiao Hong and come from the Black Phoenix clan. This is fellow Taoist Li from the Profound Hawk clan. Xiao Hong spoke with a neutral tone. When the blood-marked youth heard this, he raised his brow and smiled. I am Long Dong. It seems your extreme flames come from refining your life flames to an astonishing realm. You're a member of the Long clan. Xiao Hong's expression changed upon hearing him. I didn't think that Fairy would know of my clan. The blood-marked youth grinned and flashed his teeth. I am called Zai Ying, the white-robed woman said with a chuckle. Her voice sounded like birdsong. Han Li shortly uttered his name and said nothing else. Xiao Hong looked at Han Li and her voice turned cold. So it was you. It is no wonder you had those immortal vanquishing beads. You were originally a high-grade cultivator, so you're cultivating a dual-body magic art. When they heard this, the other 3 appeared alarmed. I do cultivate such a technique. It has been many years since I've seen you. How is Dare doing? Han Li indifferently asked. Xiao Hong paused for a moment and indifferently replied. It was sensible for Dare to follow me at the time. She has cultivated at an immense speed and already possesses a golden core. It is only a matter of time before she overtakes both of us. Is that so? I am glad she's fine. Han Li let out a faint sigh. The white-robed young woman, Zai Ying, glanced at the two and asked with a giggle, What? Does Sister Xiao recognize Brother Han? Know him? He. We can be considered old acquaintances. Xiao Hong coldly laughed. At that moment the blood-marked youth glanced at the two, and his sights briefly paused on Xiao Hong. He then immediately looked away. His eyes deeply revealed a trace of greed, and no one seemed to notice. After some thought Xiao Hong warned, Although this isn't deep in the wilderness, it is already a sign of your strength that you were able to make it here. Our next step won't be as easy as the way here. If we do not unite together, I fear that it will be difficult to safely pass through the Black Leaves Forest. This path contains an immense amount of danger. When they heard the name of the rest, the other 4 changed expressions. The white-robed woman asked, This mission is to scout the movements of the Tree Spirit clan. Will this mission be concluded once we recover the spies that are placed there and gather their information? That doesn't seem too difficult. Letter 1D4 1F, letter 1D563, letter 1D556, letter 1D4 1E, letter 1D430, letter 1D556, letter 1D5F0, letter 1D428, letter 1D46. The blood-marked youth sighed and muttered, That's hard to say. It'll depend a lot on luck. If it goes smoothly, the mission will be simple, but if we encounter trouble and the tree spirits discover us, we'll all likely die. However, this mission is greatly related to our 2 races. There is certain to be some danger. The white-browed youth frowned and puzzlingly asked, Since it is so important, why did they send deity transformation-grade cultivators? Wouldn't it be safer to send out spatial tempering cultivators? The blood-marked youth didn't immediately reply. Instead, he looked at Xiao Hong with a mysterious smile. Since he's asking questions, it seems your esteemed self should be in charge of him. The white-robed young woman calmly said, Since Brother Long is aware of this, it seems you must be in charge of the human side. The blood mark on the Long Dong's mouth stirred and he vaguely answered, That's right, I do know a few things. When the white-robed woman heard this, she curled her lips and turned to look at Han Li. Han Li remained expressionless as if he hadn't heard their conversation. This caused her to look at him with surprise. Xiao Hong turned to the white-browed youth and explained, They've sent deity transformation cultivators like us because the Black Leaves Forest is already covered in the Heavenly Wood Dreamnet. If anybody above deity transformation stage were to enter, it will immediately cause alarm. The white-brow youth nodded and suddenly looked at Han Li and Zai Yin with narrow eyes. So it was like that, but even if fellow Taoist Long might do, the other 2 are mid-deity transformation cultivators. Aren't they lacking? Brother Li, please feel at ease. The panel of elders sent both young Lady Zai and fellow Taoist Han. They naturally hold you in high esteem as well. They definitely won't disappoint. Long Dong chuckled. The white-brow youth then sinister said, Since you're vouching for them, let's leave that alone then. But if they become a burden, I will not save them. The white-browed man's open disdain finally caused the white-robed woman's face to sink. Your cultivation only exceeds mine by a single grade, yet you speak like you're a spatial tempering cultivator. The white-browed youth replied with a cold laugh, Once you've reached our stage, the difference is negligible. The white-robed woman felt anger. Just as she was thinking of a reply, Han Li interjected. Since fellow Taoist Long and Fairy Zio know more about this mission, why not have them give us the details first? When I received this mission, I was only given general details. I didn't think I'd need to cooperate with others. If I had known that, I would have most likely not taken this mission, Han Li said with an indifferent expression. He truly felt somewhat unhappy. When he found there would be multiple people on this assignment, he knew it wouldn't be simple, and he doubts about it. But since the mission was important and he was given vague details about, it would forfeit the privilege of accepting a different mission if he backed out and would need to stay in Deep Heaven City for 10 years. As such, with nothing else keeping him, he had no choice but to take the mission as he needed to leave the city within several years. As a result, he needed to gather at this location in a month's time. When he saw there were only Spirit Realm natives instead of other ascended cultivators, he could only wryly laugh. It appears this assignment's complexity and danger was far beyond what he anticipated. Didn't Zhao Wugui mention that this mission would only be chosen by ascended cultivators? Could it be he took the wrong mission? But before he set out, he was already given enough earth-cleansing pills and promised to finish his mission. This was the same as what Zhao Wugui had told him. Han Li felt bewildered when he thought of this. Long Dong smiled and said, "I'll tell Brother Han and Lady Zai about the mission details on the way. The mission is time-sensitive, so we should best set off." Brother Long's words are reasonable. We are short on time. Let's head out and then give relevant information on the way. Zio Hong agreed. The other two raised no objections. Han Li paused and slowly nodded. "All right, there will be time to talk as we travel." The blood-marked youth amiably proposed, "In that case, for the sake of carefulness, everyone should take my spirit cloud boat. We won't need to waste any magic power, only use a few spirit stones. The boat is also well hidden. We'll encounter less troubles on the way." A ball of faint white light floated out from the forest. It contained a longboat that stretched over 60 meters wide. The boat was divided into 2 stories and seemed to be crafted entirely from fine jade. The boat was engraved with simple cloud designs. Gold and silver talisman characters also floated from its surface, producing an unordinary aura. The jade boat shuddered. Suddenly, the silver and golden talisman characters exploded, turning into a white cloud that wrapped around the boat. The entire boat appeared like an unremarkable white cloud. The huge cloud soon circled in the air and silently rushed off. Although the cloud appeared to be gently flying through the air, it traveled at extreme speed, tearing through 300 meters in an instant. Its speed was comparable to an ordinary deity transformation cultivator. As Zio Hong stood on top of the boat, she looked around and praised, "Not bad. Although a spirit boat suitable for travel can't be considered rare, one this fast is a top-grade good. As expected for the Long clan, an owner of a human auction house." Ong Dong politely said, "He, Fairy Zio praises me too greatly. Your clan is one of the 7 great demon clans. You must have seen every kind of treasure. My spirit cloud boat's speed can't be more than acceptable in your eyes. However, the boat does have quite a space. There are at least a dozen rooms. Apart from one person needing to keep watch on the outside, everyone else can rest in a room. If it goes smoothly, we'll arrive in half a year. With some cultivation, it'll pass by quickly." Zio Hong nodded. "That is good. We'll take 10 days turns keeping watch while the others can do as they wish on the boat. Everyone should select their rooms first." The others raised no objections and found a satisfactory room on the boat. Since it was their place to rest and meditate, they placed down other restrictions in the room to protect them from prying eyes. Then after a short discussion, the watch rotation was decided. As it so happened, Han Li was the last position in the rotation. That gave him 40 days before he had to keep watch. With all of that arranged, Han Li didn't chat more with the others and headed into his room instead. The others had done the same, apart from Long Dong, who held the first watch. With Long Dong alone on board, his lips twitched and he made his way to the front of the boat. He flipped his hand and produced a green mat. He then sat down on it cross-legged. The blood-marked youth quietly muttered, "Half a year. I look forward to the day that arrives." Then he slowly closed his eyes and wore an odd smile on his face. In a room 10 meters wide, Zio Hong and the white-browed youth took a seat across from each other. "What? You're saying that young girl Zai Ying possesses heavenly phoenix blood and is a disciple of the true spirit noble clan?" the youth said with an astonished face. Zio Hong solemnly said, "Why is fellow Taoist Li so surprised? Your dark falcon clan is also a rare species of bird. You must have felt something." As for our Black Phoenix clan, although we are a side branch of the Phoenix clan, the purity of our heavenly Phoenix blood is far greater than what that girl possesses. But there is no doubt about the presence of Phoenix blood in her body. The white-browed sighed and wore an odd expression. So it was like that. When I first saw that girl, I felt ill at ease, like there was a slight sensation of fear, so I was somewhat at a loss when we entered the forest. So why did Fairy Zio tell me this? It's just that if the girl has other true spirit blood on her, it would have been fine. But she has the heavenly Phoenix blood of the myriad Bird King. Brother Li should understand what this means. Zio Hong sweetly smiled, but her eyes were ice cold. The white-browed youth grew silent for a moment before letting out a cold laugh. Of course I understand. But don't forget how important the elders told us to treat this mission. If we let personal matters get in the way of the clan's mission, then our lives are forfeit, regardless if we manage to acquire heavenly Phoenix blood. Zio Hong chuckled. When did I say I wanted to attack her before the mission was over? We'll have to first make sure that the mission is completed. Then we'll strike. Strike after the mission is over. Oh, if it doesn't affect the mission, that'll be possible. But will the other two help her? Even if we take back the true Phoenix blood, how will we divide it? The blood can't be evenly divided. The white-browed youth blinked and he shook his head. Zio Hong gritted her teeth and said, the heavenly Phoenix blood is useful to us both, but its effects are more pronounced on those from the Black Phoenix clan. How about this? If Brother Li helped me acquire the spirit blood, I am willing to reward him with 3 black flame pills. As for the other 2, I have a plan to deal with them. Furthermore, the Black Leaves Forest wasn't a safe area to begin with. They might not safely return. 3 black flame pills? You aren't joking, the white-browed youth said with delight. Zio Hong wryly smiled and said, I have some status in the Black Phoenix clan. Although the pills are considered priceless, after many years, I've managed to accumulate enough ingredients for 3. I planned on using them to enter spatial tempering stage. After a moment of thought, the youth frowned and said, so it was like that. I'll lend you a hand after the mission is over. However, the blood won't be easy to take, especially true blood from the true spirit noble clans. It will be difficult to acquire after they fused it into their human bodies. Don't worry, the Black Phoenix clan have a particular method of extracting true blood. It had been well researched. I have an 80% chance at the very least. When the white-browed youth heard this, he nodded. Since you are so confident, then fine. Letter 1D4 BB, letter 1D4 C7, letter 1D4 52, letter 1D6 26, letter 1D6 38, letter 1D4 52, letter 1D4 B8, letter 2134, letter 1D6 2E. In the other room, the young white-robed woman Zai Ying clasped her hands with an incantation gesture. She was sitting cross-legged on the bed. There was a meter-wide azure halo slowly floating behind her head. Upon closer inspection, the halo was perfectly round, with foot-tall white flames flickered from its edges. There was also a hollow silhouette meditating at its center. From its appearance through its radiance, it appeared similar to the woman but was several times smaller. Its eyes were shut and its hand was held in an incantation gesture. At an unknown time, the young woman's mouth began to stir and an indistinct smile appeared on her face. At nearly the same time, the image in the halo wore a similar expression. As Han Li paced in the secluded room, he wore an expressionless face, and his eyes flickered as if he were lost in thought. In the corner of the room, there were 2 small objects on the jade table. There was a kitten-sized leopard with its 4 legs lazily stretched out on the table next to the items. Sitting on the small leopard's head was a monkey only several inches tall. Black light lit up from its fur, and it looked at Han Li with intelligent eyes. Han Li suddenly stopped pacing, and he flipped his hand to produce a white jade slip and a small bottle. The bottle was simply decorated and had 3 ancient characters engraved on it. Under closer inspection, the words Red Earth Cleansing Pill. Han Li stroked the bottle with a finger and then sighed. In a flash of light, the bottle disappeared. All that remained was a jade slip. The jade slip was something that was given to him by several mysterious cultivators before he left Deep Heaven City. Han Li fiddled with the jade slip for a while before placing it against his forehead. The jade slip continued a huge map, but it seemed to be mostly incomplete. The map's lacking areas were shining with faint golden light. Although he looked through it continuously, Han Li couldn't help but continue as if he was trying to find something inside it. Countless kilometers away from Deep Heaven City, there was a hidden underground room where a monk and a Taoist sat across from each other next to a stone table. The Taoist appeared over 40 years old. He had big eyes, thick eyebrows, and faintly golden skin. The monk appeared old and had a white beard that was a half-foot long. Wrinkles littered his face, and his eyes were thin lines as if he couldn't open them. "It is about time for them to meet together and head on their way," the old man said weakly. "Yes, but there is something that eludes me. Why did Brother Jin Yue suddenly change from his original plan after he left seclusion? Why did you send those juniors to a foreign land? Those people were supposed to be the most outstanding of the newly ascended cultivators. You should clearly understand that the mission to receive intelligence from the foreign land may seem simple, but it is truly dangerous. The demon clans would send equivalent people, but in truth, they seem to have other plans." The Taoist priest spoke with a puzzled face. "The various races have become restless. You should know this," the old monk said. When the Taoist priest heard the old monk, his heart trembled and he wore a solemn expression. "Of course, but there is a newly appeared profound heavenly treasure that is listed on the chaotic myriad spirit roll. Furthermore, it is a profound heavenly treasure that ranks in the top 3, the profound heavenly execution sword." The old monk muttered, "That's right. Originally, it should have been tens of thousands more years before another attack. There is even a possibility of another 100 race war erupting as a result of this." The Taoist priest spoke with confusion. "Why is Brother Jin Yue speaking in circles? This information is obvious. How is this related to what we were talking about? Aren't the various races fearful of being drawn into this war?" Old man slowly said, "Fear being drawn in? He. Now that this matter has appeared, what race can't? In accordance to the appearance of past profound heavenly treasures, it will provoke a storm of blood before it can be formed. The race that will acquire this treasure in the end can consecrate it to attract a true spirit-grade existence to protect their clan and turn it into the strongest tribe in the spirit realm. These true spirit-grade existences are superior to immortals from the true immortal realm. Of course, before a powerful true spirit appears, the tribe in question will have to protect it. Otherwise, it will only be seized away by others. If the race that acquires this treasure is weak, they may even offer the treasures to a stronger tribe in a request for protection or abandon it in a wild area to prevent the extermination of their own clan." The Taoist priest didn't understand the monk, but he didn't interrupt him. The monk paused and then continued, "It is reasonable to say that with our strength, it is difficult to predict which tribe will receive the profound heavenly treasure. However, the demons have a body integration cultivator that has some prophetic abilities. Because they are aware they have no chance of surviving their next tribulation, they activated their potential and used their life's magic power to divine the whereabouts of the next treasure. As a result, it was shown the profound heavenly execution sword will appear in the northwest portion of what is known to humans as the Feng Yuan continent. Although the Feng Yuan continent is the smallest of the 3, it has far more races than the other continents. The so-called northwest corner consists of humans, demons, spirit tribe, wood tribe, night fiend tribe, shadow tribe, and 6 other races. In other words, the newly appeared profound heavenly treasure can appear in human lands. As of current, only humans and demons are aware of this situation, but it won't be hidden for long. After all, there are certain to be spies from the other races in our ranks. There are no walls where air doesn't pass through. If the other foreign races were to discover this, you should realize what will happen." When the monk finished, he wore a wry smile. "What, it was like that? In that case, if we aren't careful, it is possible that we will be exterminated." The Taoist priest's face turned pale. The monk sighed. "According to ancient legends, when a great number of powerful beings are exterminated in an area, a mysterious blood-offering technique can be employed, forcibly calling down a profound heavenly treasure. Those powerful tribes don't care about exterminating humans or demons. They are only using us as a blood offering. In the last 100-race war, the 4th-ranked heaven-form shield caused turmoil for myriads of years. They swept in most of the tribes on the continents and exterminated the weaker ones in a massacre. So, regardless of which tribe acquires the treasure, we will have to launch a war to evade our fate as a blood offering and have other tribes take that place." "So it was like that. So you had the newly ascended cultivators leave the city to a foreign land." The Taoist priest suddenly realized something. The monk solemnly said, "Profound heavenly treasures are heaven-defying treasures able to reverse the realm's laws. But they might not all come from the spirit realm and could be brought up from a lower realm. Although the possibility of this is extremely slim, there have been suspicious ascended cultivators in the last 100 years. They've all been released from Deep Heaven City on the most dangerous missions to the foreign tribes. Regardless of whether they succeed in their mission, they will eventually discover in a short time that they will not be able to return to Deep Heaven City. Of course, there are also a few suspicious cultivators from natives that were also moved out from Deep Heaven City or were forcefully exiled to the wilderness for whatever reason. Apart from these people, there are also a few with astonishing potential and aptitude that were also sent to the wilderness. This way, if they truly carry the profound heavenly execution sword, we are effectively moving them away from the source of calamity. If we happen to be defeated in the war, these people will be able to continue the lineage of humans and demons and have them flourish once more. There is no need to go through so much trouble. If we investigate whether or not these people truly possessed a profound heavenly treasure, we can. The Taoist priest trailed. The monk explained, we can search through the entirety of their spiritual sense with mind-controlling techniques, but what advantage is there if we find out that the profound heavenly execution sword is on our hands? It is only a source of trouble. Are you able to guarantee that no one from the panel of elders is actually a foreign being taking their form? If this is leaked, not only will our human clan become a target in a short time, even the demon clan may break their alliance with us for self-preservation. Humans will truly be exterminated in that case. We aren't some powerful race. We can't hold the treasure until a true spirit-grade existence comes knocking on our door. Even if we present the treasure to a stronger tribe for protection, I reckon the shadow race and the others won't let this chance pass them by. Instead of feigning ignorance, it'd be best we deal with the coming war. If we don't have the certainty of which race possesses the profound heavenly treasure, it will most likely be the tree tribe and the shadow tribe that attacks us. With the humans and demons manning Deep Heaven City, we will most be able to block them. The Spirit Tribe and the Night Fiend Tribe will join in the war with fierce vigor after finding out this information. At worst, great injuries will befall the various tribes and will fulfill the blood offering requirement to call upon the profound heavenly treasure. Regardless of who the treasure originally belongs to, so long as the treasure is summoned, we will have survived this calamity. But to prevent those powerful tribes from finding us, we must first achieve victory. I reckon that this battle will be different from the 100-year-long city sieges. I reckon that this war will have an outcome in several years that is far more wretched. The other tribes controlling them most likely think the same. Otherwise, the other tribes would have looked carefully for the profound heavenly execution sword. They are all preparing for the war, the old monk finally finished. After the Taoist priest heard this, he remained in place for a long while. Then he unhappily asked, "When did you find this information? Last time I wasn't told about this. Could it be that the panel of elders have hidden this from me?" It's quite simple. We only did this after we found out there was something wrong with your identity. I don't know if I should continue to address you as Lei Luo or as Elder Purple Shadow. What Purple Shadow? What does Grandmaster Jin Yue mean? The Taoist priest asked with a frown. It's about time. Let's start. The old monk ignored the Taoist priest and swept his gaze to an exquisite incense burner in the corner of the room. The stick of incense was burned halfway. It's about time. Don't tell me the incense. A purple light flashed from the Taoist priest's eyes and his face vastly changed. At nearly the same time, a purple shadow shot out from the Taoist priest's body and pounced at the old monk. The monk remained still in his seat, and he swept his sleeve. A bang sounded and golden light flashed. Series of Buddhist texts floated in the air. The purple shadow struck the wall as if receiving a strike of immense force. Soon after, his body violently trembled and turned into a ball, incapable of any further action. At that moment the wall flashed with azure light, and an azure jade bowl suddenly appeared. It flipped out and spat out an azure mist, instantly taking in the purple shadow into it. Not bad, the four-spirit incense is worthy of its reputation in restraining the shadow tribe. It even restrains a purple shadow. White light flashed from the wall to reveal a middle-aged scholar. He wore white robes and had a relaxed expression. Brother Tian Yuan, many thanks for your spirit incense. It would have been difficult to deal with this evil creature otherwise. The monk looked at the scholar and stood up, saluting him. Grandmaster Jin Yue praises me too greatly. It just happened to cultivate a new ability that allowed me to take notice that Lei Luo was possessed. It is a pity that a genius of Lei Luo's talents had met his end. The scholar glanced at the Taoist priest's body and sighed. The life from the possessed body soon faded, and its flesh became shriveled. The monk softly chanted with a trace of anguish on his face. Soon after, he flicked his finger and a golden flame shot from his finger. Suddenly, the body turned to nothing in the golden flames. Letter 1D557, letter 1D5FF, letter 1D556, letter 1D41, letter 1D430, letter 1D5F2, letter 1D680, letter 1D428, letter 1D696. According to common convention, although the purple shadow is of equivalent strength to a body integration cultivator, With Lei Luo's abilities, it shouldn't have been easy for him to be possessed. It seemed my old friend was plotted against when he last journeyed into the wilderness 100 years ago. The purple shadow was extremely devious and kept his cover for many years when he returned to the city. Were it not for the Holy Sovereign's keen senses, I fear that we would still be tricked. The evil creature thought to gather together all the ascended cultivators and send them to their doom under the guise of protection. The middle-aged man that appeared was the renowned master of heavenly origin city, Holy Sovereign Tian Yuan. The sovereign gracefully smiled and said, "However, over the past years, my old friends favor the native cultivators a bit too much. It is no wonder ascended cultivators have become resentful." The monk's face turned sullen. "I've always remained in secluded cultivation these past years and neglected these matters. Now that a great enemy has appeared, I can't deal with these small affairs. It is known how much information leaked after fellow Taoist Lei Luo's body was possessed. Deep Heaven City's defenses and restrictions must be changed. This is indeed an important matter that will require an extensive discussion between the members of the panel of elders. This purple shadow knows quite a bit. You can interrogate it in further depth, Master Jin Yue." The middle-aged scholar nodded before tossing the jade bowl in his hand through the air. "Thank you, Holy Sovereign. It's just a pity that the people who were deployed to the territories of the different races have most likely all fallen already." The elderly monk caught the jade bowl with a wistful look on his face. "Theirs was a necessary sacrifice in order to prevent the enemy from catching wind of what we were doing. The Shadow Tribe will most likely attack them along the way, and we can only hope that they'll be lucky enough to escape alive. However, was what you said earlier true, Master Jin Yue? Is it really the case that the cultivators who ascended in the past century could possess that profound heavenly spirit/sword?" The heavenly Yuan Holy Sovereign asked. "Of course not. I was only lying just then because I didn't want to waste any more time. Once a profound heavenly artifact takes shape in one world, it can be taken to another world prior to its attainment of sentient will. However, if this treasure is taken away from its world of origin prior to attaining sentient will, it will lose the chance to do so in the future. Profound heavenly artifacts with no sentient will aren't very useful, and there's no way that they'd appear on the chaotic myriad spirit roll," the elderly monk replied with a faint smile. "I see. However, I've heard that this desert seems to be a trial ground for the two tribes," Yi Ying suddenly interjected. "I see. As expected, you really are the leading expert in profound heavenly treasures, Master Jin Yue." The middle-aged scholar gave a faint smile, and it was impossible to tell whether they actually believed the old monk or not. Han Li is naturally unaware of the fact that so many changes would be taking place to the mission that he was on. At present, he and the other 4 people were skirting around the white clouds, engaging in a ruthless killing spree of the strange birds and ancient beasts there. Each and every one of these strange birds was around 10 feet in size and possessed 4 wings. Their bodies were like enlarged versions of bat bodies, yet they possessed the heads of mountain goats. Their pairs of horns were curved backward, and when they opened their mouths, the sharp fangs within presented quite an intimidating sight to behold. There were several hundred birds of this nature in the surrounding area, and as they flapped their wings, gusts of gray winds would be swept up. They could also blast arcs of lightning that were as thick as large bowls from their mouths, and their individual powers were not inferior to that of the average core formation cultivator. Furthermore, these birds all had pairs of black metal talons, so they were dangerous even in close-quarters combat. If a single normal deity transformation cultivator were to encounter such a large flock of these strange birds, they would perhaps avoid them to spare some trouble. However, in Han Li's party of 5, there were direct lineal descendants of true spirit families, metamorphosis stage demonic cultivators from the 7 major demon subspecies, as well as an absolute freak in Han Li. As such, they were able to easily protect their spirit cloud arc while engaging in a completely one-sided slaughter of these ferocious birds. The young man with the red mole was making hand seals, manipulating 2 streaks of white light that were over 100 feet in length to completely enshroud an area of over 1,000 feet ahead of him. The true form of these streaks of white light had to be some type of wickedly sharp weapon, as they were able to cleave through winds, lightning, and birds with no exceptions. Meanwhile, the young woman in the black dress was situated within a ball of furious black flames. She didn't appear to be unleashing any abilities, and was only hovering peacefully in midair. But all of the winds and lightning that struck her disappeared without being able to put so much as a single scratch on her. Any of the birds who dared to attack her were also immediately reduced to ashes as soon as they came into contact with even a tiny wisp of those black flames. Even though these birds were extremely ferocious in nature, none of them dared to approach Han Li's party after having a dozen or so of their brethren destroyed in quick succession. In contrast, the young man with the white eyebrows was fighting in a unique style of his own. He wasn't relying on any treasures, choosing instead to plunge headfirst into the flock of strange birds. A pair of black glistening wings had appeared on his back, and his arms had also become extremely thick and bulky, clearly having transformed into a semi-demonic form already. As his body flashed through the air, one could only see a half-bird, half-humanoid shadow crashing through the throngs of birds. All of the birds that were unfortunate enough to stand in his path were split into several pieces, sending a rain of blood falling from the sky. As for Han Li, his performance was the most mundane of the lot. He merely released all of his azure bamboo cloudswarm sword, transforming them into 72 streaks of golden light that revolved around his body, each of which was several feet in length. Not only did they manage to ward off all of the oncoming attacks, they also slew any birds that dared to approach him. However, the one who was seemingly the most relaxed and carefree among their party was the white-robed young woman by the name of Yi Ying. She was holding a green jade lute in her lap, and her slim fingers were gliding over its strings, sending halos of yellow light radiating through the air around her. Any oncoming birds that were struck by these halos would be completely encased in layers of peculiar grayish-white substance. They would then be completely immobilized as a result and plummet from the sky before shattering into countless pieces on the ground below. This lute possessed the extremely rare ability to turn enemies into stone. Even though none of the five unleashed their most powerful abilities or treasures, they were still able to make short work of this flock of strange birds within 5 minutes. They then withdrew their abilities and disappeared into the giant cloud formed by the spirit arc before landing on the bow of the arc. I wonder what these birds are supposed to be. I'm quite surprised that they were able to see through my arc's disguise, Long Dong sighed. I've never seen this type of strange bird either, but the primordial world is an extremely vast place, so it's no surprise that there are many species of ancient beasts that we're unfamiliar with. I'm more surprised by the fact that it took so long for something to see through the arc's disguise, Xiao Hong said in a calm manner. This also indicates that we've traveled really deep into the primordial world already, so we can expect more of these scenarios during the rest of our journey. There was a large number of those strange birds, but they were still quite easy to deal with. If we encounter some more powerful ancient beasts, then we might have to abandon this arc when necessary, the white-browed young man said with furrowed brows. Of course, if we really do encounter legendary beings like hundred-eyed giants that we can't contend with, then we'll naturally have to prioritize our own survival. Brother Han, you're on duty next. Thanks in advance for your hard work, Long Dong said to Han Li with a smile. Han Li nodded with a calm expression and didn't say anything. Meanwhile, the white-robed young woman turned to the woman in the black dress with a smile and asked, "Big Sister Xiao, the ability you just unleashed is the vast renowned black scorching flames of the Black Phoenix race, right? The legends certainly ring true in this case. Those flames are indeed extremely formidable." Xiao Hong faltered slightly upon hearing this before her brows furrowed with a hint of peculiar expression as she replied, "Those were indeed black scorching flames, but they're hardly worthy of a mention. However, your lute reminds me of a legendary treasure. It's said that tens of thousands of years ago, a body integration stage senior of the heavenly spirit region refined a divine spirit treasure known as the Lute of Wisdom. It's since staked a place for itself on the chaotic myriad spirit roll and is capable of turning enemies into stone, melting metals, and sealing objects in ice. Is the treasure you're using somehow related to this spirit treasure, fellow Taoist Yi?" I didn't think that Big Sister Xiao would be so familiar with the treasures from our human race. Even though the treasure I'm using is that Lute of Wisdom, it's a replica ancient treasure that is only capable of turning enemies into stone. Of course, even that ability is far less potent than what's capable of being unleashed by the true spirit treasure, Yi Ying replied with a dainty smile. "I see. Even so, this treasure is comparable with the average spirit treasure. After all, the ability to turn enemies into stone is extremely rare and difficult to defend against," Xiao Hong continued. Listening to the barbed conversation between the two young women, a hint of a smile appeared on Long Dong's face. A thought suddenly seemed to have occurred to him as he turned to Han Li and said, "Fellow Taoist Han, your flying swords appear to be quite interesting. There are 72 of them, and they look like they're part of a complete set. That reminds me of a senior from many years ago who was also an ascended cultivator." Even though he was only at the late spatial tempering stage at the time, he managed to set up a formation with 72 swords to match a body integration cultivator in battle, thereby forging quite a reputation for himself. However, the swords wielded by that senior were all azure in color as opposed to gold. Do your flying swords also possess a similar sword formation ability, fellow Taoist Han? Long Dong seemed to be quite interested in the azure bamboo cloudswarm swords Han Li had just unleashed. Han Li's heart stirred slightly upon hearing this question, but his expression remained unchanged as he replied, "Oh, I wasn't aware of that. May I ask that senior's name and what kind of sword formation he was using? I only refined so many flying swords so I can have more weapons to combat my enemies with. I have no idea about matters such as sword formations." "Oh, I've heard about the person that fellow Taoist Long is referring to. He's a senior by the name of Qing Yuanzi, and he was indeed quite a legendary figure back in the day. I don't know what kind of sword formation he was using, but I heard that he'd invented the formation himself. Unfortunately, it's said that this senior was never heard from again after entering the primordial world many years ago. Otherwise, with his brilliant aptitude, that senior could have very likely reached the body integration stage," the white-robed woman interjected with a smile. Long Dong showed no signs of anger at being interrupted, and he merely gave a faint smile. However, Han Li was silent for a long while after hearing this. It appeared that this Qing Yuanzi was the one who had invented the Azure Essence sword art. He was rather surprised to learn about this legendary figure from these two. It was just a pity that he had already chosen the path of simultaneous cultivation. Otherwise, he could attempt to obtain this Qing Yuanzi's inheritance and continue to cultivate his Azure Essence sword art. With that in mind, Han Li extended a polite salute toward the others before rising into the air as a streak of azure light, flying to the highest point of the Jade Arc, where he took a seat with his legs crossed. Han Li was clearly unwilling to continue engaging in further conversation, and the other 4 members of the party also bade farewell to one another soon thereafter. Some returned to their silent cultivation chambers, while others traveled to other parts of the Jade Arc for different purposes. Even though Han Li's eyes were closed, he naturally wouldn't truly go into a deep meditative state. Instead, he was considering some of the cultivation arts that he had yet to fully grasp in his mind over and over again. At the same time, he was releasing a portion of his spiritual sense to constantly monitor the surrounding area in case more ancient beasts suddenly attacked the Ark. During the following 7 to 8 days, the spirit arc continued onward under the cover of the giant cloud. Even though a few other types of flying beasts were encountered along the way, all of them simply flew by without attacking. These beasts clearly didn't possess the ability to see through the spirit arc's disguise like those 4-winged birds did. Thus, Han Li reached the 9th day of his shift. At noon that day, he had just fitted a new batch of spirit stones onto the ark and was about to return to his former spot to take a seat again when his footsteps suddenly faltered. He suddenly turned his head and cast his gaze up ahead with a surprised look on his face. How could this be? How could something like this appear here? Han Li's expression darkened significantly as he let loose a long cry. Even though it wasn't very loud, it was enough to alert the other 4 members of the party. Moments later, a few streaks of light shot forth from various locations on the ark before flying over to Han Li. "What happened? Why have you summoned us, Brother Han? Have we encountered some danger?" "What's this? Could it be?" Xiao Hong and Long Dong spoke out in quick succession, except Xiao Hong's words were filled with confusion, yet Long Dong seemed to have immediately detected something as a surprised look appeared on his face. The white-browed young man and Yi Ying also cast their spiritual sense outward at the same time. "What's that? Could it be a true spirit-level being?" the young man exclaimed. Yi Ying didn't say anything, but the shock in her eyes was quite apparent. In contrast, Han Li had already calmed down at this point. His spiritual sense was lingering in the air several hundred kilometers above them, where a gargantuan black shadow was hovering, obscuring virtually the entire sky in the process. Black clouds were tumbling incessantly near the black shadow, and lightning flashed amid rumbling thunderclaps. Countless gusts of gray winds were being swept up like massive pillars that connected heaven and earth. In the clouds apart, small sections of a gray-scaled body were visible from time to time, but no one could tell what this creature was due to its sheer enormity. However, from a distance, one could tell that the black shadow was circular in shape. It seemed to be extremely similar to a legendary true spirit-level being. As such, it was no wonder that all of the people on the ark were so unsettled by it. Just as everyone was reeling from shock, A strange cry not unlike the moo of a cow erupted from the distance. The rumbling thunderclaps then intensified, as if there were countless bolts of lightning exploding nearby. Even from such a long distance away, the thunderclaps were still quite clearly audible to everyone. Upon hearing this cry, Yi Ying's expression eased as she heaved a sigh of relief and explained, "That's not a true spirit, it's an ancient beast, a lightning turtle. This thing is one of the largest types of ancient beasts in the primordial world, but it sustains itself by absorbing the lightning in its surroundings with its body and won't attack other living beings unless it's been provoked. However, if you get on its bad side, it's an extremely fearsome being. At the very least, one would have to be at the body integration stage to stand a chance against it in direct combat." Lightning turtle. Is that the legendary ancient beast that's said to be born amid heavenly lightning? I heard that as long as there's a sufficient supply of lightning, these things will continue to expand indefinitely with no upper limit to the size they can reach. They're an extraordinary species, and I've heard that the transport spirit turtle of the Xuanwu region, which is capable of carrying and transporting an entire city, could be a lightning turtle. Even though the one above us is quite massive already, it's still incomparable to that legendary transport spirit. Xiao Hong clucked her tongue in wonder. I'm not sure if the transport spirit is truly a lightning turtle or not, but if that really is the case, then this lightning turtle is most likely less than a 10,000th of the size of the transport spirit. Even so, it can still kill us if we were to provoke it, so it's best to avoid this thing, Long Dong said with a smile. That's indeed true. We're actually quite lucky to be able to witness such a creature. Lightning turtles usually burrow deep under the ground and very rarely emerge above the ground, so it's certainly not something you see every day. They usually only emerge from the ground too. Wait, this is bad. If this turtle has appeared here, then it must be the case that a fearsome lightning torrent is about to appear here. Brother Long, pilot your ark away from this area as quickly as possible. A thought suddenly occurred to Xiao Hong, and her features immediately turned deathly pale. Lightning torrent. Everyone's expressions changed drastically upon hearing this. Long Dong's expression darkened significantly as his body swayed, and he abruptly disappeared on the spot. In the next instant, he appeared on the bow of the ark over 100 feet away before flipping over a hand to produce a badge-like treasure. He rubbed his hands together with the badge in between them, and the white clouds around the ark suddenly disappeared. The entire ark then faltered before abruptly hurtling toward a certain direction, moving almost twice as fast as its original speed as it shot forth through the air as a streak of white light. However, the spirit ark had only traveled for a few dozens of kilometers when a layer of shimmering blue light suddenly appeared in the air above the gargantuan black shadow. The blue light then coursed through the air in all directions at an astonishing speed, as if it had been spurred on by some kind of external stimulus. In the short span of a few breaths, a blue line had appeared in the sky amid a loud rumbling boom. The blue line was imbued with boundless electrical power as it arced through the air directly toward their party of 5. Long Dong drew a sharp breath upon seeing the insane speed at which the blue line was moving, and he hurriedly yelled, "I'd heard that whenever a lightning turtle appears, a lightning torrent must follow soon after. Looks like that's indeed true. Everyone, come and lend me your assistance." Even without his sudden outburst, everyone was already feeling extremely tense at the sight of the rapidly approaching blue line. As such, all 4 of them immediately made hand seals as piercing spiritual light of different colors emanated from their bodies. 5 bursts of spiritual power were injected into the spirit ark in a frenzy. After joining forces to act as a collective power source, the ark underfoot began to emit a low buzzing sound before shuddering violently, following which the surrounding scenery completely blurred. Traveling at such an extreme speed, the spirit ark had transformed into a barely traceable blur, and it quickly sped from one side of the sky to the other. However, even at such a phenomenal speed, the blue line behind the ark was still able to keep up and give chase in hot pursuit. Everyone was quite astonished to see this, and only then did they realize that the tales of how fearsome lightning torrents weren't exaggerations. Thankfully, the 5 of them were able to join forces to spur on the spirit ark to its maximal speed. If a normal deity transformation cultivator, whose forte didn't lie in speed, were to take their place, there would be no way that they'd be able to escape. Of course, Han Li and the others weren't ordinary deity transformation cultivators. All of them possessed some secret techniques to be used in dire situations, which would grant them speed that was not inferior to the speed of this spirit ark by much. However, using such secret techniques would naturally bring about debilitating aftereffects, and no one wished to incur such a risk in this perilous primordial world. As such, everyone worked together on this occasion, spurring on the spirit arc for tens of thousands of kilometers, all the way until the blue light behind them was nowhere to be seen, and the thunderclaps couldn't be heard anymore either. Only then did everyone heave a collective sigh of relief before withdrawing the spiritual power. The spirit arc immediately slowed down as a result. Long Dong's expression eased as he turned to Xiao Hong with a smile and said, "That was close. Thank heavens Fairy Xiao reacted as quickly as she did. Otherwise, a slight further delay would have seen us being swept up into that lightning torrent. Even though we may not die in there, it would definitely be very difficult to emerge unscathed. I was merely lucky. Even though lightning turtles are quite renowned, not many people actually know about their habits and behavior patterns. There just so happens to be a senior from my race who once slew a lightning turtle on his own, so he knows a bit about them. Lightning turtles usually burrow deep within the ground and won't emerge for no good reason. They'll only reveal themselves when a lightning torrent is imminent so they can devour its power of lightning. It's said that mature lightning turtles will grow a pair of beads within their bodies, one of which is lightning philic while the other is lightning phobic. These beads are quite extraordinary, and even someone without a lightning spiritual root can easily manipulate the power of lightning using them. The lightning turtle that my senior slew hadn't reached full maturity yet, so he wasn't able to obtain those beads. However, the shells of these turtles contain astonishing lightning power and is an exceptional material for refining lightning attribute treasures. If an extremely powerful being had encountered this lightning turtle in our stead, they would be ecstatic rather than horrified, Xiao Hong said with a wry smile. The senior you're referring to has to be an elder of your race for him to be able to hunt and kill such a fearsome beast on his own. That would be nothing more than a delusional dream for deity transformation cultivators like us. We're already extremely lucky to have survived that ordeal. The white-browed young man still wore an expression of lingering fear as he spoke. Indeed, lightning turtles' bodies are filled with treasures to be harvested, but it would be suicide to attempt to hunt one down without a body integration stage cultivation base at minimum. Let's continue onward. Hopefully, the rest of our journey will be a bit smoother, Long Dong said in a slightly grave voice. They had encountered a beast that was more than powerful enough to kill them after less than 20 days in the primordial world, and their hearts were feeling quite heavy as a result. After that ordeal, everyone was in rather low spirits, so no one was interested in continuing the conservation. As such, after a few more obligatory exchanges, everyone returned to their respective silent cultivation chambers aside from Han Li, who remained standing on the spot. He didn't contribute so much as a single word to that conversation, but after everyone disappeared, he cast his gaze toward the direction of the lightning torrent with a contemplative look on his face. After a short while, he heaved a wistful sigh before returning to the highest point of the Jade Arc, where he took a seat again. Unbeknownst to Han Li and the others, not long after they had departed from the lightning torrent area, the black clouds around the lightning turtle dissipated to reveal its true form. Suffice to say the creature was as huge as a massive mountain. Its gargantuan shell was deep gray in color, yet was glistening with a metallic gleam and seemed to be extremely smooth. What was even more curious was that the turtle's 4 limbs were exposed, but its head and tail were nowhere to be seen. It appeared that they had been completely withdrawn into its shell. At this point, the lightning torrent was already raging in full force, and the entire sky had been enshrouded under blue light. Bolts of blue lightning of different sizes were falling like rain from the scintillating sky up above. The smallest ones were only around a foot in length each, while the largest were as long as over 100 feet. All of them came crashing down in a frenzy, and explosive thunderclaps were the only sounds that could be heard. The lightning turtle's massive body was naturally able to withstand the countless bolts of lightning raining down from above. As soon as an arc of lightning came into contact with the turtle's body, the former would disappear like sand into an ocean. What was even more incredible was that the turtle was emanating bursts of white light, which drew the surrounding arcs of lightning toward it like a magnet. As such, a large proportion of the lightning within the lightning torrent was forcibly absorbed by this turtle into its body. The turtle swam slowly through the air, seemingly thoroughly enjoying itself within the lightning torrent. All of a sudden, the giant turtle's 4 limbs faltered before abruptly being withdrawn into its shell. Almost at the exact same moment, spatial fluctuations erupted nearby as a burst of colorful light shot forth out of thin air. The light then receded to reveal a massive skeletal bird that was radiating colorful light from its body. This skeletal bird was only just over 100 feet in size, but the aura it was emitting was not inferior in the slightest compared to that of the mighty lightning turtle. What was even more astonishing was that there were two humanoid figures standing atop its head. One of them was around 20 feet tall with black light flashing all over its body, while the other was more ordinary in size. But it was entirely enshrouded in a green cloud, making it impossible for anyone to glean its true features. Not bad, not bad. I didn't think we'd encounter such fantastic prey as soon as we got teleported here. I just so happened to be refining a 10-headed giant devil and am missing some materials. This lightning turtle will suffice, one of the humanoid figures murmured. Brother Tian Miao, you can't just claim this turtle for yourself. You'll only require some of its skeleton to refine your devil anyway. I can assist you in killing this turtle, but I want its 2 lightning beads. The other humanoid figure chuckled. HMPH, that's a lopsided deal if I've ever heard one. The most valuable parts of a lightning turtle's body are its 2 lightning beads. Don't you think it's rather unfair for you to claim them like this? The humanoid figure within the green cloud seemed to be quite displeased with this arrangement. Lightning beads are indeed extraordinary items, but they're not very useful to you at all, yet I have a special purpose for them. How about I offer to exchange the arm bone of a killing true spirit for these 2 lightning beads? The tall and broad humanoid figure proposed. A special purpose? Oh, I almost forgot that Brother Chuan Wu's transport spirit is a lightning turtle. You're trying to extend its lifespan by feeding it lightning beads, right? Tian Miao asked. That's right, fellow Taoist. Extending the lifespan of the transport spirit will be immensely beneficial to the human race. It can count as half of a true spirit, and if a large-scale war really was to break out, it would be able to provide great assistance to us. You won't turn me down, will you, Brother Tian Miao? Xuan Wu asked. Seeing as you do indeed have a worthwhile purpose for these lightning beads, I naturally won't decline this arrangement. However, we have to make haste so we don't delay the issue we've actually come here to address. We're not here on an expedition to source materials. Don't forget that we've been assigned an important mission. We have to get rid of all of those settlements established by beings of foreign races near Deep Heaven City. Tian Miao reluctantly agreed after a period of contemplation. Haha, don't worry, we'll have more than enough time. Our combined powers in conjunction with this puppet you refined from the remains of that primordial rainbow phoenix will be able to take care of this lightning turtle in no time. Xuan Wu laughed heartily before rising up into the air with his fists clenched and charging straight into the lightning torrent. Moments later, an earth-shattering boom erupted from within the lightning torrent, followed by a beastly roar that was just as devastating. Meanwhile, Tian Miao shook his head with a faint sigh as he stood atop his rainbow phoenix puppet, seemingly feeling rather exasperated by his companion's short temper. However, he still immediately made a hand seal, upon which the skeletal phoenix beneath his feet swelled drastically to over 1,000 feet in size in the blink of an eye. The skeletal phoenix then also plunged into the lightning torrent at Tian Miao's behest. A hint of horror and rage immediately crept into the voice of the lightning turtle as it let loose another ear-splitting roar. Meanwhile, Han Li and the others continued onward in their journey, completely oblivious to the events that were unfolding within the lightning torrent. As it turned out, Long Dong had been correct in stating that they would most likely be encountering more hazards throughout their journey. During the next month or so, the spirit arc continued to travel at a high speed while enshrouded in its illusionary cloud, but they were still afflicted by numerous dangerous situations. For example, on one occasion, the ark was suddenly swept into a strange gust of crimson winds. In reality, these winds were swarms of countless crimson insects, each of which was only around the size of a grain of rice. If it weren't for the fact that all 5 of them combined their powers once again to quickly evacuate the ark from that area, it would have most likely been completely devoured by those insects in the blink of an eye. Not long after that, spatial fluctuations suddenly erupted up ahead as a 2-headed bird that was over 1,000 feet in length emerged out of thin air. This bird's body was entirely golden in color and radiating astonishing spiritual chi. It was clearly a fearsome being that was not inferior in power to that lightning turtle. Everyone's hearts leaped into their throats as they waited to see whether the bird had discovered their spirit arc. As it turned out, it did notice their arc, but it displayed a complete lack of interest in such an insignificant object. As such, it merely flapped its massive wings and flew away. Han Li and the others heaved a collective sigh of relief before glancing at one another with wry smiles on their faces. After witnessing the horrors of the primordial world, no one dared to actually cultivate in a deep meditative state anymore, even after retiring to their silent cultivation chambers. Everyone remained on high alert, and their wariness was certainly warranted. During the coming days, they encountered several more crises, all of which were barely averted through everyone's collective efforts. However, their luck was always going to run out one day. On that day, the white-browed young man was on lookout duty while everyone else was recuperating in their silent cultivation chambers. All of a sudden, a long cautionary cry erupted from outside, and Han Li's expression immediately changed slightly as he rose to his feet. However, before he had a chance to do anything else, the entire ark suddenly tremored violently, and he was almost thrown off balance. Han Li's heart jolted with shock, following which violent tremors ran through the ark in quick succession. White light then began to swirl erratically around the walls around him, and those walls were gradually beginning to crack. Han Li's expression darkened as he swept a sleeve up toward the roof of his silent cultivation chamber, upon which a streak of golden light shot forth, puncturing a massive hole into the roof. Han Li's body swayed before he flew through the hole as a streak of azure light. After a few flashes, he had reached an altitude of over 200 feet above the ark. Only then did he begin to carefully inspect his surroundings. At this moment, several other streaks of light also quickly hurtled forth from within the ark. Long Dong and the others had also abandoned the ark in the face of this latest crisis. In the instant after everyone had left the ark, a resounding boom erupted, and the entire spirit ark exploded amid the erratic white light, instantly sweeping up gusts of gale-force winds that surged toward the five of them. All of them were deity transformation cultivators, so they naturally weren't fearful of these winds. All of them managed to stabilize themselves before staring at the sight of the explosion down below. Aside from the white-browed young man who was on lookout duty, no one knew what had caused this explosion. However, even as everyone swept their spiritual sense through the surrounding area, they were unable to discover anything. As such, all of them were rather bewildered. "Brother Li, who's attacking us?" Xiao Hong hurriedly asked. "Have a look for yourselves." The white-browed young man cast his gaze downward with a grim expression. Everyone faltered slightly upon hearing this, before sweeping their spiritual sense down toward the ground. After ascertaining the situation down below, Han Li's brows furrowed, while the two women let loose cries of surprise. There was a gargantuan set of mountain ranges down below that seemed to stretch into infinity and beyond. All of them just so happened to be situated above the col between two massive mountains, and in this rather obscure place, there was a vast area that had been cleared out amid a forest with huge trees of all types of colors. At the center of this area was a giant purple herb that was around 300 to 400 feet tall. Each and every one of the herb's leaves reached directly upward, as if they were massive swords, and there were countless extremely sharp-looking thorns growing all around it. There was a pair of colossal creatures facing off against one another on either side of this giant herb. One of them was a giant lizard with a body that was around 500 to 600 feet long. Its entire body was green and riddled with coin-sized black spots, while a pair of crimson horns sat on top of its head. Its opponent was a primordial giant that was around 300 feet tall. It possessed a set of sinister facial features and a head of yellow hair. It had an inky black wooden club hoisted up on its shoulder, and everyone drew a collective sharp breath at the sight of this giant. There were countless silvery white eyeballs of different sizes all over the giant's body and limbs, all of which were emanating an eerie light. Both the giant and the lizard were scrutinizing their opponent while appraising the giant herb between them. Han Li's heart stirred upon making this observation, as he also swept his spiritual sense toward the herb, following which his expression changed drastically. Within the sword-like leaves of the herb, there rested a bunch of purple grape-like fruits, each of which was around the size of a human fist. The fruits were round and supple, and seemed to be practically overflowing with translucent juices, emitting an alluring aroma. After sweeping his spiritual sense toward these fruits, Han Li discovered that each and every one of them contained an extremely lifelike dragon-shaped core. All of those dragon-shaped cores were glittering and translucent, creating quite a spectacular sight to behold. These miniature dragons didn't possess any signs of life, but they were emanating extremely pure spiritual qi. Even just by sweeping his spiritual sense through these fruits, Han Li was struck by an immense sense of comfort and relaxation. "Zoysia dragon fruit." Yi Ying blurted out the words that had just surfaced in Han Li's mind. Long Dong and the others also put on expressions of surprise and elation, having clearly also identified these fruits. These fruits are the main ingredient for refining the spirit medicine, the rising dragon pill, which can only be consumed by cultivators at or above the spatial tempering stage. The fruits only ripen once every 30,000 years, and even consumption on their own can save 160 years of arduous cultivation. Looks like this one has only ripened recently. It would be massively fortunate if we could secure this bunch of fruits, Xiao Hong murmured to herself with glowing eyes. Her expression was also mirrored on Yi Ying and Long Dong's faces. All of them were clearly extremely tempted to step in. Main ingredients for spatial tempering stage pills were extremely rare, and even most ordinary spatial tempering cultivators wouldn't be able to encounter them. Such prized ingredients couldn't be found in normal auctions, either. They were mostly traded between high-grade cultivators for items of equal value. Otherwise, the true toad spirit blood required for refining a late deity transformation stage pill wouldn't have been so desperately sought after by those attending the auction. The pill could take one from the deity transformation stage to the spatial tempering stage, which appeared to be just a single step, but the difference between the two was like heaven and earth. If a cultivator among them were to secure the Xianxia dragon fruits here and take them to a spatial tempering cultivator, they would undoubtedly be ecstatic and be willing to exchange a large bunch of deity transformation stage pills in exchange for the fruit. Even though prized materials and ingredients are extremely abundant in the primordial world, spirit medicines that were effective for deity transformation cultivators and above were still considered to be quite rare, and a certain degree of luck was required to find them. Furthermore, if a spirit medicine were to appear or ripen, it would attract many powerful beings in a short time, so these fruits wouldn't be around for long. Han Li and his group hadn't even ventured into the primordial world in search of materials and ingredients, yet they've encountered a lightning turtle and these Xianxia dragon fruits within the short span of a few months. They were certainly immensely fortunate. There would often be high-grade cultivators who stayed in the primordial world for decades at a time, only to remain completely empty-handed. Have a look at the situation down below first, the white-browed young man harumphed coldly. That giant is a thousand-eyed giant. Its eyes are all silver-white, which suggests that it's yet to reach full maturity, but it's still a vastly fearsome being. That lizard may not look like much, but for a thousand-eyed giant to be so wary of it clearly indicates that it's also quite powerful in its own right. Both of these beings most likely possess at least early spatial tempering stage power, Han Li analyzed in a slow voice. During his days at Deep Heaven City, he'd purchased some tomes related to the primordial world in preparation for his upcoming trip. As such, he was immediately able to identify what this giant was and made a calm assessment based on this observation. After hearing Han Li's words, everyone else was alerted to the fact that securing these fruits would be an extremely daunting task. However, they simply couldn't bring themselves to leave such a rare and precious ingredient behind. Everyone glanced at one another, but no one was willing to take the plunge, and their expressions all darkened in unison. Right at this moment, a buzzing sound rang out from the distance, drawing everyone's attention toward that direction. There in the distant sky, 7 or 8 massive silkworm-like beings were flying rapidly toward them. They were all around 20 feet in length, and their bodies were radiating lights of all different colors. They did not appear to be here for a picnic. Han Li's brows furrowed, but after sweeping his spiritual sense toward them, his expression eased again. These giant creatures appeared to be quite fearsome, but their auras were rather weak, and they'd pose no threat to Han Li and the others. As such, no one regarded these creatures as a threat, and they were preparing to swat them away once they drew closer. However, the sequence of events that unfolded next gave them a massive fright. When these creatures were still over 1,000 feet away from them, they just so happened to be flying right above the massive lizard. The lizard abruptly opened its cavernous, blasting forth something from within. One of the giant silkworms abruptly disappeared on the spot, sending the entire swarm into a state of panic and disarray. The remaining silkworms circled around erratically in the air, letting loose sharp screeches of shock and rage. However, their actions proved to be completely ineffective, as another giant silkworm disappeared without any premonition. Long Dong and the others were all quite startled to see this. Han Li narrowed his eyes as a wisp of blue light flashed through his pupils. In the instant that the next giant silkworm disappeared, he was finally able to glean what was happening with assistance from his bright-sight spirit eyes. Those giant silkworms weren't actually vanishing into thin air. Instead, their abdomens were being punctured by a close-to-transparent tongue that shot forth from the lizard's mouth at an incredible speed, then dragged into the lizard's massive mouth as food thereafter. It was just that the speed at which its tongue was able to fly through the air was quite absurd, thereby giving everyone the illusion that those giant silkworms were disappearing on the spot. In the blink of an eye, all of the remaining silkworms were also swallowed by the giant lizard, following which the latter lay down on the ground in a completely stationary manner. A hint of astonishment appeared in Han Li's eyes as he cast his gaze toward the lizard. Long Dong had unleashed a certain secret technique, thereby allowing him to also catch sight of the massive lizard's tongue, and he took a deep breath with a grim expression as he said, "This might be a mutated ancient beast. Otherwise, it wouldn't possess such devastating offensive power. Looks like our spirit arc was also destroyed by this thing's tongue. But we're standing right here. Why hasn't it attacked us as opposed to those giant insects?" Yi Ying cocked her head to the side with a hint of befuddlement on her face. "Who knows? Perhaps we're too small for the lizard to even bother to consider eating us. Alternatively, perhaps those giant insects just so happen to be its favorite food," Xiao Hong speculated with a faint smile. Yi Ying nodded in response, seemingly under the impression that Xiao Hong's speculation was quite plausible. "Let's not waste any more time with idle chatter. None of us want to give up on these Xianxia dragon fruits, right? Seeing as such a brilliant opportunity has been presented to us, I wouldn't even be willing to relinquish it even if I was here on my own." A hint of greed flashed through the eyes of the white-browed young man as he spoke. "There are 2 spatial tempering stage beings down below. You sure are brave, Brother Li," Yi Ying giggled. "HMPH, if there was only 1 spatial tempering stage being around, then I may immediately leave on the spot. However, with 2 here, we have some chances," the white-browed young man said in a cold voice. "Oh, are you saying?" Yi Ying immediately caught on to what he was planning. "That's right. This mutated ancient beast is quite troublesome to deal with, but that thousand-eyed giant is nothing to be scoffed at, either, even if it hasn't reached full maturity. In a battle between the 2 of them, both would most likely end up with severe injuries. Perhaps even one or both of them would die in the process. If we strike then, we'll have decent chances," Long Dong chuckled as he rubbed his hands together. "How long will we have to wait before a battle breaks out? What if they don't do anything for months on end?" Xiao Hong shook her head. "That is indeed something we need to consider. After all, we've been assigned with an important mission, and we can't stay here for too long," Long Dong agreed with a slight nod. "No matter how urgent the situation is, we have at least this much time to waste. These are Xianxia dragon fruits. They're definitely worth the delay." The white-browed young man seemed to be determined to get his hands on those fruits. Even if those 2 spatial tempering stage beings do battle one another and end up with severe injuries, if they struggle for their lives, their attacks will not be easy to handle. One or more of us may perish during that process. If you ask me, we should continue onward and not take any reckless detours. Long Dong was also very drawn to these Xianxia dragon fruits, but they couldn't compare to the other major event that he was hiding in his heart, so he naturally didn't want to take any risks, which was why he was advocating for caution above all else. "I also think that it would not be a wise decision for us to try and secure these fruits. Don't forget that giants are pack-dwelling creatures. These spirit fruits have already ripened, yet this giant and this lizard are still caught in an impasse. Perhaps the giant is awaiting its brethren to arrive on the scene and provide it with assistance. The lizard hasn't taken the initiative to attack, so it must also be plotting something as well. If we keep waiting like this, we could get caught up in a massive battle that would endanger our lives," Xiao Hong mused with furrowed brows. "I don't care what you say, I have to secure those spirit fruits." For some reason, Yi Ying suddenly decided to stand firmly by the white-browed young man's side. Not only did Long Dong and Xiao Hong falter upon seeing this, even the white-browed young man himself was quite surprised by this development. Letter 1D4F, letter 1D4FB, letter 1D486, letter 1D658, letter 1D498, letter 1D4E, letter 1D4FF, letter 1D658, letter 1D4F8, letter 1D662. However, a predicament now arose. There were 2 people for and 2 people against, making Han Li's vote the decisive one. As such, all 4 of them cast their eyes toward Han Li. Han Li heaved an internal sigh and paid the 4 of them no heed as he mused. It is indeed taking some risks for such precious spirit fruits, but it's just as Fairy Zio has said. We can't spend too much time here. Even if the giant and the lizard refrain from making a move, other powerful beings could be attracted to this place by these spirit fruits. We have to strike within 3 days. The other 4 people all glanced at one another upon hearing this. Surely it's not possible to create a suitable opportunity for us to strike within 3 days. Xiao Hong shook her head. The white-browed young man and Yi Ying remained silent, but they were clearly also quite skeptical. If we leave things as they are right now, then it would indeed be quite unlikely that an opportunity would present itself within 3 days. However, if we employ some tactics, we might be able to create some chances for ourselves. For example, we can lure them away or enrage them, Hanli proposed with a faint smile. So what you're saying is, Long Dong was beginning to understand what Han Li was plotting. That's right, if we can do that, then it's possible to create an opportunity for ourselves in a short time. The white-browed young man was ecstatic. Luring them away won't be easy, but enraging them and urging them to battle one another shouldn't be too difficult, Yi Ying chuckled. If there's not much risk involved, then I'm willing to offer my assistance. Xiao Hong seemed to have changed her mind after hearing Han Li's proposal. Long Dong contemplated the situation for a long while before finally giving a reluctant nod. Seeing as all of you have made your decisions, it wouldn't be right for me to detach myself from this endeavor. However, the course of action we take has to be a feasible one. Rest assured, fellow Taoist Long, we all value our lives, so we won't do anything reckless, the white-browed young man chuckled. Do any of you have a plan? Long Dong asked. I can conceal myself and launch sneak attacks against both the lizard and the giant down below. That way, they'll think that they've been attacked by the other, the white-browed young man immediately proposed. That's quite a simple plan, but we don't know how powerful the spiritual sense of those two beings are. If your concealment technique is seen through, you'll be in immense danger. I don't think that's a very safe course of action, Xiao Hong said with a shake of her head. In terms of concealment techniques, I have 2 limpidity talismans that can allow one to escape detection from mid-spatial tempering cultivators and below. I'd be willing to contribute them to this cause, Yi Ying offered with a faint smile. Limpidity talismans. That's a type of beveled silver spirit talisman. They should definitely be effective against these 2 creatures, but just to be safe, I don't think it would be wise for us to attack them in person. I have 2 silver worm puppets, each of which possesses nascent soul stage power. We can plaster the talismans onto them and get them to attack in our stead. That would make things a lot safer for us, Long Dong proposed with an ecstatic expression. That would be great. Even if the puppets fail to pit them against one another, we can split up into groups of 2 to lure the creatures away, then leave one of us who's proficient in both movement and concealment techniques to take advantage of that opportunity and secure the spirit fruits. Once the spirit fruits have been obtained, all of you will unleash secret techniques to get away from here. These 2 may possess spatial tempering stage power, but if we're intent on escaping, they won't be able to stop us. It's just that the one who's assigned the duty of securing the fruits must possess an extremely fast movement technique. Otherwise, the speed at which that mutated lizard can blast out its tongue will pose quite a major threat, Xiao Hong mused. Indeed, Fairy Xiao, the one to secure the fruits will be incurring a massive risk, the white-browed young man said with furrowed brows. That will indeed be a dangerous undertaking. Which of us would be willing to volunteer for such a task? Furthermore, we have to gather together once again after the fruits have been secured, so that fellow Taoist will have to do something to convince us that they'll rejoin the rest of the group, Yi Ying said in a slow and methodical voice. Peculiar expression appeared on everyone's faces upon hearing this. It was just as she had said. Regardless of which one of them secured the Zoysia dragon fruits in the end, they would most likely be attacked by both of the spatial tempering stage beings down below at once, thereby plunging them into great danger. On top of that, how could everyone else ensure that that individual wouldn't simply take the fruits and run away on their own? With these considerations in mind, no one knew how to proceed. If all of you think I'm up to the task, I'm willing to volunteer to be the one to secure the fruits, Han Li offered with a smile. Fellow Taoist Han, you're only at the mid-deity transformation stage. Isn't that too dangerous a task for you? Long Dong asked. Indeed, Brother Han, your cultivation base is slightly lacking. The white-browed young man also shook his head as he appraised Han Li. My cultivation base is indeed slightly below par, but I possess a top-grade teleportation treasure that's very close to spirit treasure. Additionally, the cultivation arts I'm using are quite special, so I have confidence in my ability to ensure self-preservation, Han Li replied with a nonchalant smile. Long Dong adopted a serious expression as he continued, seeing as Brother Han is so confident, we can certainly assign this task to you. However, how are you going to convince us that you won't run away on your own after securing the spirit fruits? I'm afraid I don't have any good ideas in that respect. Of course, If any of you think you'd be more suited for the task, feel free to step forward and replace me. It doesn't really matter to me either way, Han Li said with a hint of a smile on his face. Everyone else faltered upon hearing this. Even though all of them wanted to secure the spirit fruits, no one wanted to be the one to incur the wrath of those two spatial tempering stage beings. If any mishaps were to occur, they could end up with severe wounds or even dead. If Brother Han is willing to let me place a restriction on your body, then I have no objections, Yi Ying proposed in a straightforward manner. My thoughts exactly, Xiao Hong chimed in. Long Dong and the white-browed young man glanced at one another, but neither of them said anything. Of course you can place restrictions on my body, but that's only if I'm also able to place the same restrictions on your bodies, Han Li retorted with a cold smile. HMPH, in that case, if you were to encounter some kind of mishap, wouldn't we have to die with you? The white-browed young man harumphed coldly. He, that's the whole point, Han Li replied in a brusque manner. In reality, even if the other four were to agree to his condition, he most likely wouldn't be willing to accept such an arrangement. He was still quite traumatized by the aftermath of the restriction that the Ice Phoenix had placed on him, so he certainly wasn't going to let history repeat itself. Long Dong and the others glanced at one another, with wry smiles upon hearing Han Li's words. How about this? We can trust you if you can leave behind your bonded treasure, then allow us to plant a tracking mark on you. That way, we won't have to worry about you running away with the spirit fruits, Yi Ying proposed as an alternative. Han Li finally nodded after a period of contemplation. I can accept that, but all of us have to be implanted with tracking marks so I can monitor everyone's locations as well. Perhaps I won't even need to take this risk if Brother Long's puppets can prove to be effective. Long Dong and the others all looked at one another before finally agreeing to Han Li's proposal. Planting tracking marks on everyone appeared to be the only feasible method here. Of course, as a mid-deity transformation cultivator, Han Li appeared to be the weakest in the group, so no one was actually afraid that he'd be able to take the treasures. All of this was merely being done as a precautionary measure. After ascertaining some of the finer details, everyone finally settled on a specific course of action. Han Li opened his mouth to expel 4 streaks of golden light, each of which was several inches in length. The streaks of light revolved around him before transforming into 4 shimmering golden swords that fell into the hands of his 4 companions. Long Dong and the others immediately unleashed secret techniques or plastered talismans onto these swords to restrict them, then stowed them away into their respective storage treasures. After that, 4 balls of light of different colors emerged from their fingertips before disappearing into Han Li's body in a flash. Han Li had used his spiritual sense in advance to carefully assess these balls of light, only allowing them to enter his body after ascertaining that they were indeed formed by pure spiritual power and weren't harboring any restrictions. Han Li also returned the favor thereafter, sending 4 balls of azure light disappearing into everyone else's bodies. As such, everyone was feeling a lot more reassured. After going over the plan one final time, all of them dispersed and flew away in different directions. The azure streak of light that Han Li had transformed into flew for over 500 kilometers before his body was revealed again. He hovered in midair as he briefly surveyed his surroundings. He then closed his eyes and slowly released his spiritual sense. After ascertaining that there wasn't anything amiss in the nearby area, he opened his eyes again before making a hand seal. A thunderclap immediately rang out behind him as a pair of azure and white wings surfaced on his back. He then flipped his hand over to produce a purple talisman. It was none other than his high zenith invisibility talisman. He was trying to secure a treasure right under the noses of 2 spatial tempering stage beings, so he didn't dare to get complacent at all, which was why he decided to use this talisman right away. He plastered the talisman onto his own body, following which he disappeared on the spot amid a flash of purple light and silver runes. Having done all that, he rose into the air and set off to return to his former location. Even though he wasn't able to fly as quickly as he could before activating the talisman, he was still certainly not flying slowly, and it didn't take him long to return to his original spot. The giant lizard and the thousand-eyed giant were still caught in a tense confrontation down below. Everyone else had also disappeared as far as the naked eye was concerned. Han Li exhaled as he used his spiritual sense to detect the locations indicated by the tracking marks he'd left on his 4 companions. Everyone else returned as a result and hovered in midair in the nearby area. There were two in the air above the giant lizard, while the other two were situated behind the thousand-eyed giant. They were also all using some special concealment techniques, and there would have been no way for Han Li to ascertain their locations with his spiritual sense if it weren't for the tracking marks that had been planted. As for the two silver worm puppets that Long Dong had been referring to earlier, Han Li was completely unable to sense them. He didn't know whether this was due to the effect of the limpidity talismans, or if they hadn't actually been released yet. Countless thoughts were whizzing through Han Li's mind, but his gaze remained fixed directly down below. Everything in the surrounding area was abnormally quiet, akin to the calm before the storm. This peculiar and rather strained atmosphere persisted for a long while, yet nothing changed at all. Han Li remained completely expressionless, but he was starting to get a little impatient. It seemed that the time they had agreed on was about to arrive soon as well. Right at this moment, the giant lizard seemed to have felt a sense of discomfort with one of its giant paws, causing it to raise it reflexively before immediately bringing it down again. However, right in the instant when it brought its paw down, silver light suddenly flashed from the soil beneath the paw, following which a silver thread shot forth, hurtling directly toward the thousand-eyed giant. This created the illusion that the lizard was using its paw to launch a sneak attack. The giant faltered upon seeing this before letting loose a thunderous roar of rage. Gale-force winds were swept up around its body as it swept a palm through the air, violently vanquishing the oncoming silver thread. However, almost at the exact same moment, a blurry and indistinct object flashed through the air beneath the giant's hand. Immediately thereafter, a pillar of silver light that was as thick as a bowl shot forth out of thin air, traveling at an incredible speed and reaching the lizard's massive head in an instant. The lizard's green eyes flashed as a crimson pillar of light erupted from its twin horns. Following a resounding boom, the two pillars of light clashed, and both disappeared into nothingness. The lizard then immediately threw back its head and let loose an earth-shattering roar. It tensed its four limbs, and its massive body immediately rose up as it opened its cavernous mouth to reveal rows of intimidating fangs. A hint of violent ferocity flashed through the giant's eyes as it immediately tightened its grip around the black club resting on its shoulder. At the same time, brilliant light erupted from the eyeballs all over its body, and all of them began to blink in unison. The presence of so many blinking eyes on a single body created quite a harrowing sight to behold. However, Han Li was ecstatic to see this, and he waited with bated breath for the situation to unfold further. If these two spatial tempering stage beings really did engage in battle with one another, then their objective would be much easier to achieve. The lizard opened its mouth to blast forth a crimson shadow, following which a ball of silver light exploded within the soil beneath one of its huge paws. The crimson shadow shot forth and punctured the silver object that had just emerged from the soil, and the latter fell heavily to the ground. Letter 1D68F, letter 1D5FF, letter 1D5F2, letter 1D4, 1E, letter 1D430, letter 1D68T, letter 1D41C, letter 1D698, letter 1D55E. Han Li's heart stirred upon seeing this, and he focused his gaze to discover that the silver object was none other than a silver worm puppet. The puppet's core had been punctured by the giant lizard's fearsome tongue, reducing it to a pile of scrap metal. It appeared that the puppet's cover was still blown right in the instant that it was about to spring into action, and it had been destroyed by the giant lizard as a result. The thousand-eyed giant wasn't very intelligent, but it also realized that something was amiss upon seeing this. Immediately thereafter, all of its eyeballs turned toward a certain direction, following which countless threads shot forth from within. Another resounding boom erupted as the other silver worm puppet, which was hiding beneath the giant's body, was punctured by 7 or 8 black threads at once. The black threads then separated in different directions to shred the puppet's body as if it were made from soft butter. Han Li drew a sharp breath upon seeing this. It appeared that the task he was undertaking was far more dangerous than he had anticipated. However, the Zoysia dragon fruit was vital for him to refine spatial tempering stage pills in the future, so he had to take the risk no matter dangerous the situation was. After all, as long as he could secure the seeds of these fruits, he'd be able to nurture an indefinite number of them. With that in mind, Han Li's heart settled once again. The giant let loose a few menacing harumphs in a show of intimidation, before resting its club on its shoulder again. The giant lizard took a completely expressionless glance at the giant before lying back down onto the ground. The two colossal creatures returned to their former impasse. Meanwhile, Han Li stared intently at the two of them, not daring to allow his concentration to slip, even in the slightest. Seeing as the puppets had failed, they would have to resort to their backup plan, which consisted of Long Dong and the others luring the lizard and the giant away, thereby creating an opportunity for Han Li. Sure enough, after just the span of a few breaths, the pleasant sound of a lute being stroked rang out above the giant lizard's head. Yellow halos of light then surfaced in the air above, surging directly toward the top of the giant lizard's head. At the same time, white light flashed as two short golden halberds appeared. The halberds swayed before crashing down violently like a pair of powerful golden worms. Almost at the exact same moment, two humanoid figures appeared in the air above at an altitude of several hundred feet. They were none other than Yi Ying and Long Dong. Yi Ying as gently stroking her spirit treasure replica lute, while Long Dong was manipulating two treasures at once with a serious expression on his face. Despite the lizard's massive size, its movements were extremely agile. As soon as the attacks came crashing down toward it from the air above, it let loose a low roar before immediately rising to its paws. Red light flashed from the crimson horns on its head, following with a vast expanse of red light emanated forth, keeping both the yellow halos and twin halberds at bay. Immediately thereafter, green light flashed from the massive lizard's limbs. Countless strands of its bristly fur transformed into green streaks of light that hurtled into the air. At the same time, its huge tail swished through the air and it abruptly disappeared, leaving behind only a trail of afterimages in its wake. In the next instant, the massive lizard's tail, which was over 200 feet long, appeared beside Yi Ying and Long Dong in a flash before sweeping violently toward them. Even though the tail hadn't yet made contact with them, the fierce winds it had swept up were still threatening to blow them away. As expected of a mutated ancient beast, as soon as the lizard was attacked, it retaliated in an extremely ferocious manner. Yi Ying and Long Dong were aware that this giant lizard definitely wouldn't be easy to face in battle, but they were still given a massive fright by its fearsome combat prowess. Thankfully, neither of them had any intention of engaging the lizard in a direct confrontation. Yi Ying immediately raised a hand to hurl forth a golden talisman, which transformed into a ball of golden light that enveloped her body. Immediately thereafter, she disappeared on the spot before appearing over 300 feet away. Meanwhile, Long Dong let loose a long dragon's roar as a yellow suit of armor surfaced over his body. The entire suit of armor was constructed from metallic scales, encapsulating his head and limbs in a watertight sheath, and there was even a pair of massive bronze wings on his back. As he flapped those wings, a series of afterimages immediately appeared in the air around him. From a distance, it appeared that countless humanoid figures had emerged out of thin air up above, creating quite an astonishing sight to behold. Using their peculiar movement techniques, both of them were able to successfully evade the sweeping tail of the giant lizard. However, neither of them dared to pause for even a single instant in midair, as the giant lizard had set off behind them in hot pursuit, stirring up gusts of gale-force winds in its wake. Even though most of the lizard's attention had been diverted by these two, it was still keeping an eye on its most significant enemy, the thousand-eyed giant. It was afraid that the giant would take this opportunity to take the spirit fruits for itself, but the sight that greeted the lizard was a very reassuring one. It turned out that as soon as these two cultivators had appeared to attack the lizard, two other cultivators had also appeared in the air behind the giant. One of them rubbed their hands together before raising them to conjure up a storm of black fireballs, while the other grabbed the air to manifest a massive inky black claw. The claw appeared directly above the giant's head before crashing down with ferocious force. A burst of rumbling erupted as the giant was caught completely off guard, having been struck on the head by the fireballs as well as the massive black claw in quick succession. Both Xiao Hong and the white-browed young man faltered slightly upon seeing this before erupting into elation. However, the sight that they were greeted by next immediately made their smiles congeal on their faces. Amid the sea of black flames, a roar of intense fury suddenly rang out. Immediately thereafter, all of the silvery white eyeballs on its body stirred, creating an immense suction force that instantly engulfed the black flames raging around it. As for the huge black claw that the white-browed young man had manifested, it didn't seem to have hurt the giant at all, either. The thousand-eyed giant casually swatted the air above its head, and the massive claw was immediately vanquished without a trace. Its display of power was certainly not a welcome sight for the pair of cultivators. However, their attacks had clearly already enraged this massive monster, so there was no turning back. A vicious look appeared on the giant's face as it let loose another thunderous roar. After its eyeballs had engulfed all of the black flames, they immediately turned toward the two people in the air above. Amid a flash of brown light, countless strands of black threads shot forth, encompassing both of them within a dense net. Both Xiao Hong and the white-browed young man had witnessed the might of these threads of black light earlier, and their expressions changed in unison as they hurriedly took evasive measures. One of them summoned an object and hurled it down below, upon which it instantly transformed into an azure spike of light. They then immediately ducked into the spike before manipulating it to hurtle toward a certain direction. Meanwhile, the other transformed into a massive black falcon that was around 10 feet in size before immediately spreading its wings to teleport away. It was quite clear that these two demonic cultivators had no intention of engaging the giant in direct combat, either. Thus, all four of Han Li's companions had sprung into action, diverting the attention of the lizard and the giant. They were barely evading the ferocious attacks of the two spatial tempering stage beings, while launching their own retaliative attacks whenever the opportunity arose, thereby even further infuriating their assailants. However, even though the lizard and the giant were relentlessly attacking the four cultivators as if they were pesky flies, neither of them strayed far away from their original spot, ensuring that they didn't distance themselves from the spirit fruits. Otherwise, even if the four cultivators possessed extraordinary movement techniques, there was no way that they'd have lasted so long in the face of the relentless assault unleashed by these two fearsome spatial tempering stage creatures. As things currently were, as soon as any of the four cultivators encountered any danger, they could immediately teleport far away, thereby earning themselves an opportunity to catch their breath. As such, they were able to continue to pester the lizard and the giant. The result was that the two creatures were naturally cast into a thunderous rage. However, neither of them were able to stray away from the spirit fruits, thereby creating an impasse where neither side could do anything to the other. As the four cultivators continued to annoy the two creatures, more of their attention gradually became diverted away from the spirit fruits. Meanwhile, Han Li was silently drifting downward. With his current insubstantial body, even the two spatial tempering stage beings completely failed to notice him. This was also the biggest source of confidence Han Li had in undertaking this mission. Even so, Han Li was still proceeding with extreme caution, to the extent that he didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. He gradually drew closer to the spirit fruits, from a distance of over 1,000 feet away to around 700 to 800 feet, then to 300 to 400 feet, then to just over 100 feet. As he approached the spirit fruits, he naturally tensed up further and further. It would undoubtedly be the case that he wouldn't be able to continue to conceal himself in the instant that he plucked the spirit fruits. As such, the lizard and the giant would immediately discover him. He had to do everything he could to ensure self-preservation in such a scenario. Soon, Han Li had reached a spot where the spirit fruits were right before him. Not only could he smell the faint aroma wafting from these fruits, he could even see their tiny worm cores with brilliant clarity. However, he didn't immediately rush in to grab the fruits. Instead, he swept his hand over his storage bracelet to summon a few items. He then pursed his lips and suddenly rubbed his hands together before raising them toward either side of his body, sending several shimmering silver balls hurtling toward the two massive creatures. Immediately thereafter, his hands shot forth like lightning, and the bunch of supple spirit fruits disappeared in the blink of an eye. In the same instant, his thunderstorm wings appeared on his back, and he immediately flapped them, upon which he disappeared into thin air amid a loud thunderclap. Two earth-shattering roars immediately erupted as a crimson pillar of light, and several black threads shot forth at an incredible speed, instantly puncturing Han Li's body. However, the Han Li that had been struck was only an afterimage, and it immediately disappeared on the spot. Meanwhile, his true body had only barely managed to flee from the scene in time. A string of thunderous explosions erupted as several balls of silver lightning appeared on either side, each of which was around an acre in size. Countless arcs of electricity that were as thick as large bowls flashed violently within those silver balls, sweeping up violent winds and emitting incessant strings of thunderclaps that drowned out everything else. It was as if doomsday had arrived. These were none other than the lightning beads that Han Li had refined, and he had tossed out 4 of them at once. Having been refined using the lightning symbol techniques, each and every one of these beads were imbued with power akin to the full-force attack of a spatial tempering cultivator. Additionally, The nature of the power itself possessed the lightning attribute, which was why the beads were so devastatingly powerful. It appeared that he had made the right decision in using them. If it weren't for the fact that those treasures had delayed the lizard and the giant, he wouldn't have been able to get away even with his thunderstorm wings. After the spirit fruits were stolen, the massive lizard and the thousand-eyed giant were absolutely furious, but they were temporarily trapped by the power of the lightning beads. Long Dong and the others were also given a fright by the immense power of Han Li's lightning beads, but all of them then immediately unleashed movement techniques to flee the scene in elation. During the process, they also unleashed concealment techniques to hide themselves from view. Thus, everything had disappeared from the nearby area aside from the two spatial tempering stage beings, which were still trapped within the explosions from the lightning beads. Han Li was flying as quickly as he could using his thunderstorm wings, disappearing into the distance after just a few flashes. In order to ensure safety, Han Li even threw up a mouthful of blood essence to unleash his blood shadow evasion technique, thereby further enhancing his speed. After expending an extensive amount of effort to break free from the explosions, the lizard and the giant let loose a string of thunderous, enraged roar upon discovering that all 5 cultivators had disappeared, along with the bunch of Xianxia dragon fruits. Several hours later, a dull thunderclap rang out atop a mountain peak tens of thousands of kilometers away. Immediately thereafter, Han Li emerged amid an arc of azure and white lightning. He then took a glance behind him, and a faint smile appeared on his face. The task that he had undertaken had been quite dangerous, and he'd been forced to expend quite a bit of energy, but he had thankfully managed to secure the spirit fruits. As a safety precaution, Han Li released his spiritual sense to carefully scan through the surrounding area. After ascertaining that nothing was amiss there, he descended onto the mountain's summit. He flipped a hand over to produce a jade vial, and he poured out 2 crimson pills, which he quickly consumed. Even though he had only used his blood shadow evasion technique for a short time, the primordial world was quite a perilous place, and it was best to constantly maintain prime condition when possible. After swallowing the pills, a stream of cool and refreshing energy immediately began to circulate through his meridians. Han Li's expression eased as he summoned a jade box, which was as translucent as ice. He carefully removed the lid of the box to reveal a bunch of exuberant fist-sized purple fruits. He appraised the spirit fruits with an unblinking gaze before gently picking up a spirit fruit between 2 fingers and carefully assessing it. After a while, Han Li exhaled and nodded to himself. These were indeed Xianxia dragon fruits. This type of spirit fruit was one of the few spatial tempering stage pill ingredients that produced seeds, thereby allowing it to be nurtured and reproduced. It was a type of spirit medicine that he'd had his eyes on for a long time, which was why he had been willing to take such a massive risk for it. Now that the spirit fruits had been secured, a smile finally appeared on Han Li's face. If he could find another ingredient known as the soaring cloud glue, then refine those 2 ingredients along with some other secondary medicines, he'd be able to produce soaring dragon pills, which were extremely alluring even to spatial tempering cultivators. A flash of excitement appeared in Han Li's eyes as these thoughts ran through his mind. However, his brows suddenly furrowed at this moment, and he turned toward a certain direction as his expression turned neutral once again. Moments later, a white streak of light approached Han Li from that direction. After a few flashes, the white streak of light appeared above Han Li's head. The light then receded to reveal a young man. It was none other than Long Dong. At this moment, his suit of yellow scale armor had already disappeared. As his gaze fell on the spirit fruits in Han Li's hands, an elated look immediately appeared on his face. Haha, your abilities really are quite astonishing. To think that you'd truly be able to snatch the fruits away from those 2 fearsome beings. Let me see if they're really Xianxia dragon fruits. As soon as Long Dong landed on the mountain summit, he began to approach Han Li. There's no hurry, brother Long. Let's all take a good look when the other fellow Taoists also arrive. A faint smile appeared on Han Li's face as spiritual light flashed within his hands, upon which the jade box disappeared. A hint of barely detectable killing intent flashed through Long Dong's eyes upon hearing this, but a thought then occurred to him, and his expression smoothed out. You're right, fellow Taoist Han. I was too hasty there. Thus, a smile appeared on his face as he made his way over to a large rock that was over 100 feet away from Han Li, and he sat down upon it with his legs crossed. Meanwhile, Han Li remained standing on the spot with his hands clasped behind his back, silently awaiting the arrival of the others. A short while later, Xiao Hong and the white-browed young man arrived on the scene, and both of them were also overjoyed that Han Li had actually been able to secure the spirit fruits. However, there was still one more comrade left to come, so they could only repress their excitement and emulate Long Dong, sitting down in silent meditation. 15 minutes later, just as everyone was beginning to speculate internally about whether something had happened to Yi Ying, a ball of golden light shot forth from the distance before landing on the mountain. Sorry for making all of you wait, fellow Taoists. As I was passing through a forest, I just so happened to find a myriad-year green spirit wood, and it took me some time to dig it up from the ground, Yi Ying explained with a smile. Myriad-year green spirit wood. That's a superb material for refining wood attribute treasures. You sure are quite lucky, fellow Taoist Yi. Xiao Hong was rather surprised to hear this. He, surely you jest, big sister Xiao. A green spirit wood can't even begin to compare to Zoysia dragon fruits. Brother Han, you managed to secure the fruits, right? Yi Ying chuckled before turning her attention to Han Li. I have indeed. Everyone can gather around and have a look. Han Li nodded before sweeping a hand over his storage bracelet. The jade box appeared once again, and he carefully removed the lid to reveal its contents. A faint, pleasant aroma wafted through the air, and everyone immediately turned their eyes toward the bunch of spirit fruits with expressions of rapt focus on their faces, trying to ascertain its authenticity with their spiritual sense. It should be real. A flash of elation appeared on Xiao Hong's face as she made her assessment first. Moments later, everyone else also withdrew their spiritual sense with satisfied nods. Seeing as we verified that the fruits are real, let's go ahead and split them. There are 6 fruits in total here, so there'll be one left over after we each take one, Han Li said in a calm voice. Everyone's brows furrowed upon hearing this. 6 spirit fruits will indeed be rather difficult to split among us, but let's set that aside for now and distribute 1 fruit each to everyone first. The white-browed young man was growing a little impatient. You're right, Brother Li. Fellow Taoist Han, please distribute the first 5 spirit fruits for now, Xiao Hong chimed in with a dainty smile. Long Dong and Yi Ying naturally had no objections to this arrangement either. A faint smile appeared on Han Li's face upon seeing this. He carried the jade box with one hand and made his way over to Xiao Hong first. He plucked 1 Zoysia dragon fruits with 2 fingers and offered it to her. Xiao Hong was ecstatic and immediately produced a wooden box to accept the fruit. However, Han Li refrained from releasing the fruit and was appraising her with a meaningful smile. Xiao Hong faltered slightly upon seeing this before quickly coming to a realization. She immediately swept a sleeve through the air, and a small golden sword with 2 talismans plastered onto it appeared in her hand. She tore off the talismans and tossed the sword directly toward Han Li. This was none other than one of his azure bamboo cloudswarm swords. Han Li opened his mouth, and the small sword disappeared down his throat as a streak of golden light. At the same time, he released the spirit fruit, and it fell into Xiao Hong's wooden box. As Xiao Hong began to appraise the spirit fruit with elation twinkling in her eyes, Han Li had already made his way over to the white-browed young man, with another spirit fruit caught between his 2 fingers. After witnessing the exchange that had just taken place, the young man naturally knew what to do already. He also produced another small golden sword and removed the restriction on it before tossing it to Han Li. As such, after a short while, Han Li only had a pair of spirit fruits left. After pocketing one of the fruits, he placed the jade box onto the ground before backing away as a disinterested bystander. Just one of these spirit fruits was enough for him, and a second one wouldn't really benefit him much at all. However, this was naturally unbeknownst to the other 4 cultivators, and all of them appraised him with much friendlier expression for his willingness to back down in such a situation. There's only 1 spirit fruit left now. How about we hold an impromptu auction for it? Whoever can offer the most spirit stones gets to take the spirit fruit, and the spirit stones spent will be split among everyone else, Long Dong suggested. HMPH, isn't that too lopsided of an arrangement, fellow Taoist Long? Everyone knows that your Long family is a family with immense wealth. Even the 4 of us combined most likely won't be carrying as many spirit stones as you are, the white-browed young man rejected with a cold harumph. Oh, then do you have a better idea? Rather becoming enraged by the young man's blunt refusal, a smile appeared on Long Dong's face as if he were open to suggestions. A fruit as valuable as this naturally has to be exchanged for using other items. Regardless of whether it's using pills, ingredients, or materials, the one who gets to take the fruit has to offer something that is roughly equal in value to the spirit fruit and can be split among everyone else. What do you all think of this arrangement? Xiao Hong suggested with a seductive smile. The white-browed young man immediately nodded in agreement. Yi Ying cocked her head to the side and contemplated this notion for a while before also giving a nod of approval. Han Li naturally had no objections either. Seeing as Fairy Xiao's suggestion has garnered the most support, we'll do as you say. Even though Long Dong was reluctant to agree to such an arrangement, the other four had all expressed their approval, so he could only comply with a forced smile on his face. 2 hours later, a flying azure carriage that was over 100 feet in length appeared high in the air above the mountain. It then shot forth toward a certain direction as a streak of azure light. Within the span of a few breaths, the carriage had covered a distance of several thousand feet, and after just a few more flashes, it had completely disappeared. Han Li was sitting near the rear of the carriage, fiddling with a small section of cylindrical green wood. This section of wood was only around a foot in length, but its surface was glimmering with faint spiritual light. Upon closer inspection, one would notice that there were indistinct silver threads flashing within the section of wood. Letter 1D627, letter 1D4C7, letter 212F, letter 1D452, letter 1D4CC, letter 1D452, letter 1D4B8, letter 2134, letter 1D4C2. This green spirit wood could prove to be quite useful. Much to everyone's surprise, the final spirit fruit fell into the hands of Yi Ying. The treasures she offered were more extravagant than everyone else could produce, so they could only reluctantly allow her to take the spirit fruit. This small section of the myriad-year green spirit tree was Han Li's compensation of choice. This piece of wood was as light as air and immune to the effects of water and fire. It was one of the most ideal materials for carving formation spells onto, and as it aged, it would develop a certain degree of immunity toward the power of the 5 elements. As such, this type of wood was most often used to refine large treasures like spirit arcs, beast carriages, and things of that nature. After fiddling around with the section of wood for a while, Han Li stowed it away before glancing at his surroundings. The flying carriage had been supplied, once again, by Long Dong, and even though it wasn't as comfortable nor as stealthy as the spirit arc that had been destroyed earlier, it was able to fly at a greater speed than the arc. Speaking of which, the spirit arc's concealment ability would have been next to useless in the face of powerful ancient beasts. As such, this faster flying carriage was a superior option anyway. If they were to encounter some minor hindrances, they could simply accelerate and shake them off. At this moment, the flying carriage was whizzing through the air as an azure blur, hurtling along at an incredible speed. Aside from Long Dong, who was piloting the carriage, everyone else was sitting in silence. Han Li withdrew his gaze before suddenly turning his attention to Yi Ying, upon which his eyes narrowed slightly. The person in the group whom he was most wary of, and found to be the most mysterious, was this woman, who appeared to possess the same cultivation base as he did. This woman appeared to be quite young and spoke in a very simple and straightforward manner, but having completely mastered the great development technique, Han Li's instinctive senses had already been honed to an incredibly sensitive degree, and those senses told him that this woman was the most dangerous one among the 4, even more so than Long Dong from the so-called true spirit family. Just as Han Li was contemplating these matters, Yi Ying suddenly opened her eyes and met Han Li's gaze. Han Li's heart jolted upon seeing this, and before he had a chance to react, Yi Ying pursed her lips with a faint chuckle. Han Li gave a rather awkward smile before immediately turning away. In doing so, he missed the hint of amusement that flashed through Yi Ying's eyes in response. During the following half a month, their journey was remarkably smooth, and they didn't encounter any trouble at all. Everyone was quite relieved by this peaceful spell, praying that the rest of their journey would be just as smooth and placid. Several days later, the scenery around them transformed as a vast expanse of desert appeared before them, sending gusts of scorching wind sweeping toward their carriage. A hint of a surprise appeared on the white-browed young man's face as he mused. Could it be that we've already reached the southern skyline? Indeed, this place is the Great Southern Desert, and it's the simplest path through which one can reach the territory of the Wood Tribe, Long Dong replied in a grave voice. I've heard many things about this place. The legends say that it's impossible to go around this desert. Is that really true? There are often Wood Tribe and Shadow Tribe beings traveling through this desert. Isn't it still a little too dangerous for us to go directly through it? Xiao Hong asked with a frown on her face. Fairy Zio, the environment here certainly isn't the best, but it's much safer than the other two alternative routes we can take. As for going around the desert, that would be next to impossible. On one side of the desert is the renowned Zenith Beast mountain ranges, which is teeming with countless high-grade ancient beasts. Even most of the spatial tempering cultivators who venture into those mountain ranges never return. On the other side is the even more treacherous worm Abyss Canyon. There are over 100 vicious worms at or above the spatial tempering stage lurking in there, including even several tens of body integration stage worm monarchs. A few deity transformation cultivators like us would simply be offering ourselves up as food if we were to take either of those paths. As for skirting around even further to avoid those areas, that would lengthen our journey to an enormous degree, and it would most likely take us around a year or so to get to our destination. The war is imminent, so there's no way that Deep Heaven City would allow us to delay the completion of our mission for so long, Long Dong explained with a wry smile. I see. However, I've heard that this desert seems to be a trial ground for the two tribes, Yi Ying suddenly interjected. My seniors also cautioned me about this before my departure. The white-browed young man had also adopted a rather cautious stance. In that case, I don't think we should continue traveling on this flying carriage. We'd stick out like a sore thumb. Let's all conceal ourselves before continuing onward. Even if everything goes as smoothly as possible, it'd still take us around a month to pass through this desert, Long Dong suggested after a brief period of contemplation. Zio Hong contemplated the notion before exchanging a glance with the white-browed young man, following which she nodded and agreed. We'll do as you say. I have no objections either. Traveling on the flying carriage really will make us stand out far too much for comfort, Han Li said with a smile. Yi Ying was the only one who expressed a neutral stance, willing to comply with the most popular course of action. Thus, after a brief discussion, everyone emerged from the flying carriage before unleashing concealment techniques to obscure themselves. Long Dong stowed the flying carriage away, and everyone ventured carefully into the desert. Not long after entering the desert, Han Li immediately sensed that this desert was unlikely any that he'd ever seen, in that the temperatures here were simply far too high. Even while flying at low altitudes in the air, he could still feel the bursts of scorching heat emanating from the ground. He felt as if he were flying over a massive volcanic crater rather than a desert. Han Li looked up at the 7 scintillating suns in the sky above, then down at the ground below. He swiped a hand through the air, sending an ice spike hurtling downward. Prior to even making contact with the ground, the ice spike had already completely melted and evaporated into nothingness. Han Li heaved a faint sigh upon seeing this. All of a sudden, white light flashed beside him, and Yi Ying appeared with a dainty smile on her face. Fellow Taoist Han, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but the Great Southern Desert once consisted of a vast expanse of volcanic craters. Is that so? I didn't know that, Han Li replied in an indifferent voice. It was said that a heavenly phoenix, which possessed dual wind and earth attribute powers, once battled a true spirit-level fire crocodile that inhabited the volcanoes down below. Their battle raged for over a month, and during that process, the phoenix used its abilities to conjure up countless sandstorms, burying all of the volcanoes down below and forming this desert, Yi Ying continued. I see. No wonder this desert is so peculiar. True spirit-level beings really are capable of unfathomable feats, Han Li murmured, seemingly in response to Yi Ying, but also seemingly to himself. Indeed, human cultivators like us may be able to combat some of these true spirit-level beings once we reach the grand ascension stage, but we're still no match for the truly powerful beings at the true spirit level, such as true dragons and heavenly phoenixes. I wonder what it would be like for a human to attain true spirit-level power. Yi Ying chuckled before flying onward, leaving Han Li behind. A hint of surprise appeared on Han Li's face as he looked on at her departing figure, but he quickly recomposed himself and focused on forging ahead in his journey. Over 10 days later, Han Li and the others were still flying along at low altitudes. Even though they were all deity transformation cultivators, flying for so long under such scorching heat was making them rather exhausted. Let's find a place to rest after a further half a day of travel, Long Dong suddenly proposed. We do indeed need to find a place to rest and recover our magic power, Zio Hong replied with a nod, and the weariness in her voice was quite apparent. Oh, what's that? A low cry of surprise suddenly sounded. The one who had spoken was none other than the white-browed young man. And Li reflexively cast his gaze toward the direction that the young man's attention was focused. However, he discovered that there was nothing there. Han Li raised his eyebrows as he swept his immense spiritual sense toward that area, upon which a peculiar look appeared on his face. At this point, everyone else had also scanned through the area with their spiritual sense, and all of them also adopted peculiar expressions. Looks like there's a small town there which is inhabited by humans. I'm not seeing things, am I? Han Li mused in a skeptical manner. After releasing their spiritual sense, everyone discovered that there was a relatively large oasis situated up ahead several tens of kilometers away. Within that oasis was a small town, and it appeared that there were many humans and cultivators living there. This place is so secluded and it's so close to foreign races. How could there truly be humans living here? Something seems a little fishy here, Xiao Hong mused. An indecisive look appeared on Long Dong's face, and he raised his eyebrows, but refrained from immediately offering a response. Let me send over an avatar to investigate, the white-browed young man offered. He then laid a hand on the back of his head, and a silhouette flashed as a small falcon that was around a foot in size emerged. The falcon was entirely black in color, and it circled through the air before flying toward the small town in the distance. The white-browed young man then closed his eyes to forge a connection with the small falcon, with his spiritual sense in case any mishaps arose. Xiao Hong and Long Dong exchanged a glance with one another, but they seemed to also be of the opinion that this was the best course of action, as evidenced by the fact that both of them refrained from stopping the white-browed young man in what he was doing. Han Li continued to appraise the small town in the distance with befuddlement in his heart. Yi Ying was also doing the same, with an intrigued look on her face. The small falcon flew extremely quickly, and it was back within 5 minutes. When the falcon disappeared into the back of the white-browed young man's head again, the latter opened his eyes. There's no mistaking it. There really are humans inhabiting that small town, and there are many high-grade cultivators among them. There are 7 or 8 deity transformation cultivators, but I didn't see any spatial tempering cultivators. Everyone was even more perplexed upon hearing this. In any case, it would be best to continue in our journey and avoid any unnecessary trouble, Han Li said in an indifferent voice. I don't think that's a good idea. The existence of this small town is really peculiar. Perhaps something happened recently in the desert. I think it would be best for us to inquire about the situation before continuing onward in case we inadvertently plunge headfirst into peril, Long Dong said with a shake of his head.